People driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a five in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. And they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it a channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour go
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham, and we have reached Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. It's Thursday the 26th of June. It's almost Wimbledon weekend. I think it all kicks off. Glastonbury kicks off as well. It's going to be very, very hot. They're talking about record temperatures this weekend, even hotter than last weekend. So you might as well get yourself down to a beach somewhere or somewhere near a hose pipe before they start banning water. It'll be lovely. Absolutely fantastic. Meanwhile, it's not lovely in Downing Street. Keir Starmer has returned from The Hague, where he was at the NATO conference being sort of roundly humiliated by various people asking him questions he didn't like the look of answering. And unfortunately for him, he's come back to a massive crisis in government because, of course, never mind what's going on in Iran, never mind what Donald Trump says, the daddy of all foreign policy now, according to the head of NATO, he's got a real massive rebellion on his hands. And all the papers this morning have got little bits of that. Front pages say this: Starmer to back down on benefits cuts, says the Telegraph. Rebel MPs want Labour regime change, since the Times. Starmer ready to retreat on benefit cuts, says the newspaper, and Starmer in complete denial over the size of the rebellion in his own party. That's in The Guardian, of all people. They've even turned on him. Chloe Dobbs is here. Chloe, very good morning to you. We'll be looking through all the big stories in the papers. The other big one this morning is on the front page of The Sun. We've been covering this Sun story all week about how migrants are coming into this country and within hours are working as delivery drivers for various food companies like Deliveroo, like Just Eat, like Uber Eats. Today we've got an even bigger story which says Russia is pushing migrants to the UK to overwhelm border defences and sow division, according to security sources in this country. Vladimir Putin's tactics include providing fake documents, transport and even military escorts to smuggling gangs. Well, it won't surprise you to know that we told you this story some time ago. We said that there was no question that the Wagner Group were doing all sorts of operations in Africa, pushing people across over into South America, and they were then going into America as well. I mean, we're getting sub-Saharan African refugees, effectively, travelling across the Mexican border at Tijuana. How on earth could they do that unless they were getting some serious help? We've got much to talk about. Let's have a look at what you have to do to get in touch with us. Remember, you can leave us a voice note just like this.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn.
Morning, Mike. Joan from Norfolk.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark from Derby here.
Morning, Mike. Great show as always. It's Kelly here, somewhere on the A5 stuck in traffic in the Midlands.
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
I'll never tire of hearing that. They just don't know what they're doing, with another word in the middle. It's 5 minutes past 6. Let's get it on. So welcome to Thursday. Chloe Dobbs, very good morning to you. Nice to see you. We've got plenty to discuss here, and before we get to the Sun story about Putin and his involvement in pushing migrants over towards us, Keir Starmer's in a hell of a bad place, isn't he? I mean, here he is this morning, coming back to what he thinks is the government that he runs, and it turns out he doesn't run the government anymore because it turns out the backbenchers are all saying, well, we're not doing what you want, so you'll have to change what you want to do.
Yeah, and this is such a crisis that apparently his diary for the week has been all rejigged so that he personally can go round to all of these MPs and beg them to not rebel. This is going to be a huge, huge blow to Keir Starmer.
How humiliating.
If this is defeated, and a lot of people are saying that this is essentially a confidence vote in Keir Starmer. Some of the backbench MPs are saying, no, that's not what this is about. We actually want to get rid of people like Morgan McSweeney that we don't like because they don't listen to backbench MPs.
He's supposed to be this sort of, malevolent figure who's meant to be a genius, right? Now, if this guy's a genius, I'm the king of Prussia, because everything he's done so far, apart from removing Sue Gray back in sort of September of last year, has been a disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they brought him in thinking that he's some sort of genius because he was...
Because he helped them win the election.
He helped them with their campaign.
Yeah.
But there's quite a difference in skill set between running a campaign and messaging and actually running the show in Downing Street and in Westminster. Actually governing, implementing good policies that affect the nation positively. This is just not a good look at all for Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves. And we're talking here about something that's going to save $5 billion, which might sound like a lot of money, but when you compare
it's like 5%, isn't it?
When you compare that to the fact that this benefits bill is meant to balloon to $100 billion over the next 5 years, which is an astronomical amount of money, that's barely even putting your toe in the water in fixing the broken benefit system. If they can't even do that, I mean, I just feel hopeless. We've got Kemi Badenoch's expected to speak today to, it's interesting that she's almost offering to help Keir Starmer to pass this, which I think would be quite embarrassing. But she's going to set out a bunch of recommendations, and she says we really need to crack down on specifically mental health sickness payments, and the number of
there's no doubt so many more people now claiming mental health. I think it's ballooned by something like 20 billion or something.
So the number of people who are claiming PIP since the pandemic for citing anxiety and depression has tripled. And what she's suggesting is that we need to massively cut back on that. And I do think for most people who have minor mental health conditions as opposed to severe mental health conditions, the best thing for their mental health would be to give them a sense of purpose in life and have a job. And she's also suggesting that we're going to offer £1 billion towards helping offer these people the mental health support they need to get back into work. That's what it should be.
Kemi Badenoch
a hand up rather than a hand.
But does it matter what Kemi Badenoch says? Because, I mean, one, she's not going to get anywhere near the levers of power, and two, the problem that we've got here is that Labour are running a government which they weren't ready to run. I mean, she actually said something quite interesting when I interviewed her when she got the job as leader. She said, Labour were ready for an election campaign, but they weren't ready for government. And so when they came in, they just didn't know what to do. And now we're sort of almost a year in, and everything that Starmer has touched has just gone completely and horribly wrong. I mean, even the Rebels the other day, I mean, if he goes around trying to convince them not to vote against him, it'll probably go the other way, because they already tried one thing. They tried to strong-arm them, right? And sent a load of whips round into the various MPs' rebel camps, and they said that the number of people then backing the rebel amendment rose from 80 from about 108 up to 123. So every time the Labour sort of, bully boys go in, the reaction goes completely the other way.
Yeah, it just puts people off more and more. I mean, there's so much division solution in the Labour Party, because you've had Rachel Reeves's autumn budget with that 40 billion of tax rises. That was deeply unpopular, I think, amongst the general population, amongst business owners, and clearly wasn't any good for the economy. But on the other hand, you've got a load of people in the Labour Party like Diane Abbott, Louise Haigh, who think the solution to Labour's unpopularity is to raise taxes even more and make the state even bigger, move more things into nationalisation and the state's hands. So it's very difficult for them to please these people. But the problem, I think, the way Keir Starmer's going about things is he's trying to take this middle ground where he's trying to please everybody and then he's pleasing nobody.
He must surely realise that that's not working. I mean, after doing it for like 11 months and getting to where he is now, he must know. Let's have a look at some of the clips from yesterday, though. Starmer was yesterday asked about that rebellion in the welfare reform.
On the question of welfare reform, we're committed to reforming our welfare system. It doesn't work, it traps people, and it has to be reformed. And it also has to ensure that we've got a welfare system that is fit for the future. And that is why there will be a vote, and we will press ahead with the reforms. Thank you.
Angela Rayner said there would definitely be a vote, because we were speculating yesterday that he might just pull the vote altogether if it looked like he was going to lose on Tuesday and just put it off until the autumn. But they're standing by it. They're saying we're definitely going to have the vote. But according to
they might just be bluffing.
But a lot of the papers, well, they might be. I still was saying yesterday I wouldn't be surprised if they pull it and come up with some other reason, right? You know, I've dog ate my homework or something. You know, we can't have it. But Keir Starmer's preparing to back down on the welfare cuts bill, according to the Telegraph and various other papers, because he can't afford to lose it, because it will be a vote of no confidence, effectively, in the government, because other Labour people have said if he does lose the vote on Tuesday, the next thing you'll have to do is actually have a vote of confidence to see whether or not there is any confidence in the government, and he might lose that as well.
Yeah, I can understand why, from a completely selfish perspective of his own, given what's happening there, he may decide to just completely U-turn and not make any of the changes to the benefit system. I've never heard any U-turns from him. But that would be a great shame, I think, if that is what it comes to, because we cannot sustain this absolutely ballooning benefits bill for any longer in this country. Even with the small changes that they are making, it may save £5 billion in the short run, but it's still expected to go up by another, 18
and they're not really
billion.
making any massive changes anyway. I mean, they're all tinkering around the edges. It's not, I mean, even though the Labour backbenchers are rebelling, the Labour aren't actually making any swinging cuts. They'll probably end up hurting the wrong people and taking money away from people who actually really need it. And the scammers who continue to scam in order to get whatever they want will continue to scam, because that's what happens, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that if the Labour Party cannot pass this, I think what it shows is that, not just on benefits, but on pretty much anything else, if they try to make any cuts whatsoever, they are going to be faced with an absolute storm. Now, what does that mean? That means more tax rises in the autumn budget, very sadly. Yeah, unfortunately. Which is not going
to nobody wants, really.
Create the growth that they were talking about before the election. Yeah. How's that gone?
That's not gone terribly well. Let's have a look at Prime Minister's questions yesterday, which, of course, was not Prime Minister's questions. It was Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, because he was away second week in a row.
Always away.
I know. He'd rather be away. I'm sure he'd rather not have had to come back. Mel Stride was asking the questions from the Tories.
You will find many of their names amongst the 122 who've signed up to oppose the government's welfare bill. They say that the bill is dangerously rushed and ill thought through. So can the Right Honourable Lady explain why she thinks that she is right and 122 of her own colleagues are wrong?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, it's nice to face the latest wannabe at your dispatch box. I'll tell the Right Honourable member why we're pressing ahead with our reforms, and that is because we're investing £1 billion into tailored employment support, a right to try to help more people back into work, and ending reassessments for the most severely disabled who will never be able to work. Mr. Speaker, we won't walk away and stand by and abandon millions of people trapped in the failing system, left behind by him and his colleagues.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady completely sidestepped my question. She can't even defend her own government's policy. Can she at least assure the House that the vote on Tuesday will actually go ahead?
On Tuesday. Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know if he sort of listened to what I said, because I was reading off the script, but what I can tell him, and I don't need a script, we will go ahead on Tuesday.
So it'd be pretty embarrassing if they don't go ahead on Tuesday. So, I mean, Angela Rayner, who some people think is possibly going to be the next Prime Minister of this country, which would be rather interesting. The problem is, though, they're not providing jobs for people. They keep saying they're providing thousands of jobs for people. They're creating this growth industry that you keep mentioning as well. But none of it is happening. You know, they talked about creating jobs in defence just a couple of weeks ago. Thousands of new jobs in procurement, thousands of jobs in munitions factories, submarine building, you know, manufacturing of planes and all the rest of it. And then yesterday they announced they're buying a load of planes in from America. So, you know, there's not really much going on between the Labour government's announcements and what actually is reality. And I think that's what people are seeing through.
Yeah, on the one hand, I want them to go ahead with these cuts, but on the other hand, I do think that Labour really needs to pull their act together well, they said they were going to get Britain working, right? That was one of their slogans. They've done absolutely nothing to do that. In fact, they've done the complete opposite. I mean, one of the estimates is that Rachel Reeves has cost the economy 184,000 jobs, which is crazy. And it's Angela Rayner who's talking there, and she is the one who's behind this employment rights bill. And one of the many things that does, amongst a whole lot of red tape that brings in for businesses, is it brings back 0 hours contracts. The exact technicalities are a bit complicated, but what that means...
It's going to make life more difficult for employers, basically.
It is, but it's going to mean that people who want to maybe try work, but not in a super, you know, committed, set 35 to 40 hours a week kind of way, it's very difficult for them to do that. I think that the gig economy, flexible working is fantastic for people who want to come into the workforce and try it in a flexible manner. Another thing they can do is, of course, stop those migrants from taking all the Deliveroo jobs and actually give those jobs to people who are...
But the problem is the reason that
currently on benefits and could do it.
But the people who are currently on benefits and who don't want to do it because they don't think it's worth their while, because on benefits you get everything paid for. And that's like the migrants. They get their, you know, they don't have any costs really of living. They have no cost to pay to rent an apartment or to rent a flat. They've got no mortgages, they've got no food bills, everything's given to them. If you're on benefits, that's the same thing. But if you actually go to work properly, you end up having to pay your own rent and you pay your own council tax and you pay your own energy bills.
Whilst also being tired and setting an alarm early.
Yeah, but I mean, this idea of, you know, maybe you'd like to try working. I mean, I don't know. I come from a very different generation. You didn't try to work. You had to work. You basically, if you didn't work, you know, it was shameful to go on benefits, or you didn't want to be, you know, to be categorised as somebody who just lived on the dole. Whereas now, people seem to think they're entitled not to go to work because, it might be a bit stressful for me. You know, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we've got to this point where people can choose whether or not they want to work. Well, I don't think you can. Work and contribute to society, you know, contribute to the exchequer. That's what normal people should be doing. They shouldn't be sitting around going, oh, I might just try working a couple of days a week, you know, because otherwise it might be a bit stressful for me. I mean, do me a favour, please. Chloe Dobbs is here. It's coming up to 18 minutes past 6. We've got plenty to talk about, including the latest welfare scandal and including also the latest migrant scandal. What is going on? This is Talk.
you can't try and snipe at the Conservatives for things that weren't our fault.
Oh, I mean, I
This
haven't
is
got
not one.
time. Don't tell your big mate Donald Trump to tell his big mate Vladimir Putin to stop killing people, then we can solve that problem like that.
Won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap? The court's time being wasted, laying down a ruling on what is a woman. You and I have been speaking for far too many years about
And
this.
actually, you know, I'm very grateful to you too, because you have always covered this topic.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 20 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. Scott in Dorset says the fact this lousy government needed a Sun investigation for them to act on migrants working as delivery drivers sums them up. Even Stevie Wonder could see it was going on, but apparently Angela Eagle and the rest of this band of incompetent morons didn't know and are shocked and will act swiftly. Planks, the lot of them. Absolutely right. Can't disagree with that. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Good morning, Mike and Chloe. Darren from Kent. I actually am on PIP due to an accident I had where I was hit in the head with a 13-ton digger. I am now in constant pain for the rest of my life. I'm on a huge amount of medication. I also have PTSD. I served in the armed forces. I get checked every year and I still struggle to make sure I get my money because they keep trying to stop it. Now, I'm all for these youngsters who have got anxiety to get a kick up the backside, to get them moving. But also, this is also damaging the people like myself who I'm unable to work ever again. And I'm struggling because they're not giving me the money I should be getting.
Yeah, Darren, I'm absolutely sure that there's plenty of people like you, and those are the people that I say always end up getting badly affected by these cutbacks, because whenever any government tries to cut back on welfare, somehow they always manage to miss the people who shouldn't be on welfare, and they always manage to attack the people who should be. And that's one of the the ever-present problems with trying to reform the welfare benefits situation, isn't it? Because you always know that there are people, everybody always, whenever we do this on this show, people ring in and say, we know a family live down the road, none of them work, you know, you never see them any time before midday, there's 4 kids in their 20s, there's 2 parents or 1 parent or something like that, and then there's people like Darren there, who obviously can't work and has to be looked after, and that's fine. But, you know, the idea that somehow there's millions and millions more people now who can't work because they just don't really fancy it, that's the problem I think we've got.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's definitely a huge issue with the welfare system when it comes to assessing people.
Yeah.
So first of all, people have recognised that there are certain things you can put on the form when you're telling them what's wrong with you to make sure that you tick the box and you get your money.
Yeah.
So anyone who's got any sort of mental health issues, they know if they put the word suicide on their paper, even if they don't feel suicidal, they know that's guaranteed you're getting your money. So they all do it. There's also a problem with, you know, when you fill out these forms, you'll generally find the people who are the best at writing and can make the best argument, who are maybe not the most in need of the benefits, but maybe the most literate actually are the ones that get the money.
They know the loopholes, and they know, as you say, which words to use to make sure that they get what they want. But let's get back to Starmer and Labour as well at the moment, because a new poll out in the Times today, it's an MRP poll, the first since Labour's landslide victory last year, and it basically says the extent of Keir Starmer's fall from grace has now reached peak unpopularity. Reform UK would become Britain's largest political party if an election were held today, putting Nigel Farage in pole position to become Britain's next Prime Minister. So YouGov MRP poll, the first one since their victory last year, the party would lose 233 of the 412 seats that they won, which is extraordinary. Meanwhile, Reform is on track to have 271 new MPs from the 5 that it has now. I mean, it's quite an extraordinary turnaround, that, isn't it? I mean, we read it out as though it's only words on a page, but actually, to go from 5 MPs to 271 under the current polling situation is remarkable, isn't it?
It's absolutely incredible. It's very, very interesting times that we are living in, where politics is so fluid that a party that only a year ago was considered just a little bit of a protest vote to give the Tories a bit of a kick up the backside, is actually looking like it could have the keys to number 10 at the next general election. And the work that they have done, they have worked so hard over the past year to get themselves to that position. A lot of work has been done, particularly by Zia Youssef, to structure the party, have all of these local branches, because, I mean, before it was just a few guys running the show before the general election last year. But now they've actually...
And the election was called early, so they weren't really ready.
Yeah,
you know.
and now they've got a proper team that's working incredibly hard. Keir Starmer isn't doing himself any favours, so he's giving Reform plenty of votes by just messing up pretty much everything. And we've had poll after poll after poll coming out saying Reform are becoming a very popular party, becoming the most popular party, but a lot of people, of course, dismiss the polls. But then we had the local elections.
You can't keep dismissing every poll, though,
yeah, exactly. When you've had so many of them, and now a big YouGov poll, that really shows, as well as the success at the local elections, which was just absolutely extraordinary. This shows these people are not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. The Tories, however, might be disappearing down the plug hole, because the Tories would lose another 75 seats, leaving Kemi Badenoch's party with just 46 MPs.
That's so embarrassing.
So they'd be behind the Lib Dems.
Annihilated.
The Lib Dems would have 81 seats, the Conservatives 46, Labour 178, and the Reform 271. Even the Greens would have 7, Plaid Cymru would have 7, SNP 38. I mean, it's incredible. It's just devastating for Keir Starmer, isn't it, really, this whole situation, that he has got what he thinks is a massive majority. He's quoted in the papers this morning as saying that he's very happy with the way things are going. And you kind of go, really, are you? And he says that he believes that they got a landslide victory for a reason, that everybody wanted change, except that was a year ago. You know, and they didn't really want Labour in; they just wanted the Tories out. You know, if you put up a collection of teddy bears, they probably would have won because the Tories were so unpopular, and the Tories are getting even more unpopular. So, I mean, it's not working for them either. Let's have a look at what the Conservatives put together, though, because this is quite good. Maybe they should just go into the media business. This is a Conservative video put out about Starmer.
If you can't govern your party, how do you govern the country?
Why have you so spectacularly failed to read the mood among your MPs over this issue?
You turned on the winter fuel payment.
Looking at the number of Labour MPs rebelling at the moment.
As your critics suggest, you don't have the political nous and judgment required for the top job.
Opposition to your benefits changes is growing.
Are the 120 Labour MPs who are backing the amendment among?
Alongside that promise that you have to not put up taxes on those you describe as working people.
I mean, that's this noise now, isn't it? I mean, he just looks like a rabbit in headlights all the time now. He looks nervous, he looks jumpy, looks like he's not getting any sleep. He can't be happy. He can't be enjoying the job, can he?
You can tell that the pressure is getting to him. He's always very nervous when it comes to domestic matters. But until now, he's always had his chest puffed up on the international stage. As we said, he loves going abroad. But then look how he looked at NATO next to Trump, and he was
terrible.
Just wandering around like a lost kid that's got no friends. So
because Trump was talking to everybody else but him, even though he was standing next to him. I don't know how they arranged that, but somehow they didn't really have much to say to each other.
Yeah, it was pretty embarrassing, and the fact that with Iran, he was saying no, he's not going to bomb Iran, and then 2 seconds later it was done, and he was just completely left out of the equation. Completely embarrassing. So now on both domestic and international matters, he just looks absolutely pathetic, and you can see it, as you say. You can see that he looks very nervous and very out of place, and I think the pressure is really getting to him. Now, when he came into power, yes, he had a landslide majority, but he would have known that so many of those seats were won on a knife edge, so the actual number of people in the country that voted for him was not actually that significant. And as you said, it was just a protest vote, essentially.
It really was.
And there has been, I'm not just saying that, there's been polling on this where they've asked people who voted for Labour in the 2024 general election, why did you vote for them? And pretty much everyone said it was just because they weren't the Tories, not because they liked their policies. And I mean, their policies, they were promising the world, so that's saying something, right? And then you also had them win a bunch of seats because of the vote on the right being split between Reform and the Tories, because people were protesting against the Tories.
Because Reform came second in an awful lot of seats, didn't they?
They came second in, I think, 99
something
seats.
like that. So I mean,
and they'll be coming for all
this
of
one from Brian in Glasgow says, "Morning, Mike and Chloe. Do you think Keir Starmer is arrogant enough to call a general election rather than allow Angela Rayner to become Prime Minister if the Labour Party turns against him?" Well, I think they have turned against him, and I don't know. I don't think he's definitely arrogant, and he might be arrogant enough to call a general election, but he would know that he would be absolutely destroyed in a general election, as this latest poll shows. Let's get a voice note from Judith on welfare reform.
Good morning, Mike. It's Judy from Altofts, West Yorkshire. The only people to blame for all these people claiming PIP is this government, the last government, and the one before. Oh, a while ago, probably 12 months ago, I helped an old lady fill her PIP form in because there are pages and pages and pages. And you could get it if you were obese, if you had a drink problem, if you had a drug problem. And so they're advertising this for any little mental health issues as well. So that they've been advertising for people to apply for this. And now they're complaining because they are. Absolute idiots, a lot of them. Thank you.
Judith's always got a very, very sensible head on. She's absolutely right, of course, you know, because the whole business of welfare has got out of control because of the government's running it badly. You can't really blame people. I say this about anyone who's claiming benefits. If you're going to make more money on benefits than you are getting a job,
why wouldn't you?
Then I'm not surprised that people aren't doing it. You know, you've got to change the system so that there's an incentive to go to work. Because if there isn't an incentive to go to work, people will just go, yeah, I don't really fancy it. You know, I don't get, as I say, I don't get people who don't want to work, because I think working is very good for you. It's something I've always done, and most of the people that I know have always done. And I appreciate that there are people like Darren who can't work, and those are the people that the welfare system was created to help. Yeah. You know, you're supposed to give people a safety net if they have a problem. But it's not supposed to be a way of life for people who just don't fancy working.
Yeah.
That's really where we are, isn't it?
That's the thing, that's the way the system has been very, very poorly designed. I mean, some of the things she was reading out there from that form, that you can get it just...
I've got a drug problem. Fine, here's some benefits. I've got a drink problem. Have some benefits.
Which is going to make the problem worse.
Yeah.
If you've got people who've got a drink and drug problem and you say to them, oh, you can sit around at home all day, they're going to sit around at home all day.
Stoned.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, great. OK, then. And can I have some money so I can buy some more dope to get even more stoned? Brilliant. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? Morning, Mike. Starmer spends most of his time abroad to avoid domestic issues, says Nan in Wales. He's completely out of his depth. He has no interest and no answers in problems here. He prefers to play dress up on the world stage, hoping all of it will go away. Well, it won't go away. People are getting angrier. And
well, he said himself that he prefers Davos to Westminster.
He did say that. Unfortunately, all of the things that he said in the past are going to come back to haunt him. You know, he doesn't talk about much anymore is the time when he was the head of the CPS, when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions, because now he doesn't want to say that because he reminds everybody that he didn't prosecute the rape gangs enough. But that's another story. We'll get to that in a minute as well. Loads more to come, including the story on the front page of The Sun, which we must do, all about how Russia is agitating and getting organised and making sure that some of the boats that are coming over here are funded not only by them, but supplied by them as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:33. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. It is the home of common sense here. Chloe Dobbs is here with us as well. Front page of The Sun this morning. And they've had a great week with these stories about migrants, by the way, because, of course, they've had the delivery bike scam. They've got sort of part 3 of that. Brazen migrants still working illegally as fast food delivery riders from asylum hotels yesterday, despite a crackdown promised by the Home Office. Well, of course, we talked about this the other day, Chloe. Everybody knows where these migrants are. Everybody knows which hotels they're in. Everybody knows that if you go to those hotels, you see a lot of bikes outside. You know, they vowed to crack down on it. They still haven't. Angela Eagle's going to meet up with the directors of these companies next week. But, you know, like everything else in this crazy world right now, the government say they're going to do something and the Home Office say they're going to do something, then they just don't do it. and hope that everybody
with
forgets.
Everything that the Labour government promises us, I just say I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Because I have absolutely no faith in them anymore, nor does the rest of the country.
Neither does the rest of the country. But interestingly, the story they've got in the front page and in 4 and 5 today, small boat crossings are being weaponised by hostile states such as Vladimir Putin's Russia to destabilise Britain. And this is coming from senior security sources last night. The ploy that they're doing aims to overwhelm our border defences and pile pressure on struggling communities by spreading division. Tactics include providing fake documents, transport and military escorts to the gangs. And we talked about this, I think, last year, maybe the year before, because I was wondering how it was possible that so many people from sub-Saharan Africa were suddenly turning up on the borders of Tijuana in Mexico, trying to get into the United States of America. And it turns out that there was quite a lot of involvement by what's called the Wagner Group, you know, that kind of mercenary operation of Russian soldiers who go around in various different parts of the world, you know, causing coups and fighting, you know, on behalf of various different rebel forces, you know. And it seems that they were organising plane loads of these people from countries like Congo, from Sudan and various other places, flying them over into places like Venezuela and then letting them move up into America. And that, I mean, when you talk about smuggling gangs, I mean, that's a big operation. You know, it's one thing to bring them across the, you know, the channel, but to bring them all the way from Africa to South America and then on into America, I mean, that's quite a big deal.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that this is a huge scandal. As you said, we heard last year about Russia getting involved to move people towards Europe and to America, but this is the first time we're potentially seeing that Putin's been involved in specifically trying to bring illegal migrants to the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that a foreign power has the time, money and resources to spend on sending illegal migrants our way just shows how devastating it is to our country and how destabilising it is.
Yeah.
These aren't just, you know, this isn't just an amazing multiculturalism success story with doctors and nurses all coming across over the channel to contribute to our society. They know that this is causing a lot of tension in our society. It's causing a heck of a lot of problems.
Well, it's wrecked Western Europe, hasn't it, really?
And also, let's not forget the huge security threat that it poses.
Right.
I think a lot of people are yet to accept how high the security risk is in this country at the moment, how high the terror threat is in this country at the moment. We've had some Iranians caught who supposedly came here.
Clearly enemies of our state,
illegally,
at the very least.
Illegally, who come across the channel. And they've just acknowledged at that NATO summit the fact that illegal migration is a huge threat to security, which I think is a good step in the right direction for them to recognise that. And I think a lot of people don't recognise how high the terror threat is in this country because our intelligence services have been so good so far at foiling so many plots, but there have been so many terror attacks planned that they've managed to stop.
And the truth is, they don't really know how many terror attacks might be being planned. They know about some of them, and they get to some of them, and they get to most of them.
I don't want it to be the case that it takes us until we have a horrific, devastating attack to actually do something about this. Why don't we do something about this before we get there?
You know, I mean, we had the Manchester Arena attack, you know, and nothing really much happened after that when it came to the numbers of people who are here from countries that wish to do us harm. That's the problem. You know, and according to The Sun this morning, they've got 3 asylum seekers convicted of crimes in the UK. I mean, they've picked 3. There could be any number of them. Asylum seeker Snur Hamakirim exposed himself to 2 young girls in an underpass, basically. Syrian Misa Oglo climbed into a security area near the Palace of Westminster so he could get a better view of the New Year fireworks on the Thames. He was in court just the other day, didn't realise that it wasn't unlawful to do such a thing. Migrant Zaldan Hossan Taha did not like the conditions of the home he was placed in, so he set fire to it. And he was a bloke from Kurdistan. And all of these people have admitted crimes, and they've all gone into prison in our systems, and they're still here, and they're taking up spaces. Meanwhile, we've got another guy.
Why don't we just deport them right away?
Well, exactly. Migrant of the day.
Although you say those have been put in prison. I mean, the guy that climbed the fence, I think it says there, he only got fined 100 quid.
Yeah, right. Well, the fact is they should be not even here. That's the point. The bottom line is a migrant who can stay in the UK because he doesn't want to shave. This is a guy from Tajikistan who apparently can't be named. He says he would be tortured and have his facial hair forcibly removed if he was sent back home. And you kind of go, well, so what's the problem? So just grow your beard back. Apparently it would take too long. He said beards are unofficially banned by the government, and hundreds of thousands of men have been arrested for having them in the last decade.
That's crazy.
I mean, sorry, I don't really care if beards are banned in Tajikistan. Maybe I should go and live there because I don't really like beards very much.
Yeah.
But that's another story. But, you know, the idea that he can stay in this country on those grounds...
Has he used ECHR rules to do so?
I should imagine so.
Yeah, I was speaking to my lawyer friend the other day, and what he was saying to me is that what happens in all of these migrant cases with all these ridiculous uses of ECHR rules is that the first tier tribunal that they go to, the lawyers and the judges there, they are the worst. They only earn like 50 to 80k, which in their world is a small amount of money.
Right.
These are the people that got rejected from like, everywhere else.
So the lowest rung.
It's only if the Home Office then appeals it and it goes up to the next level, to another tribunal, that you have the guys that actually really know what they're doing. So I mean, the chicken nuggets case that did get appealed, and then when it went up to the higher level, they said this is absolute rubbish, and they did get rid of the guy. But
eventually, but it took a long time.
But in most of these ridiculous cases, the Home Office just doesn't bother to appeal, and so it gets accepted and they get to stay in the country when some judge who's actually one of the most incompetent judges in the country has ruled on that case.
But the sheer numbers are what is overwhelming the system as well, because you've got so many people, I said this the other day, 50,000 plus staying in the country because they've lost their appeal, they've lost their asylum seeker claim, but because they can appeal, they're allowed to stay for another year. And that is at the behest of the Home Office, at the cost of the taxpayer. They stay in the hotels, they don't go anywhere.
And same goes for convicted criminals that are trying to fight deportation, and you have these people who end up just staying in the country indefinitely because they keep on appealing, and sometimes the Home Office just
But Nigel
gives up
Farage put a tweet out yesterday saying that, and he was in the studio here last week saying exactly the same thing. He said, you know, there are people now writing to him who are in prison in this country, who are foreign, who say, we actually want to be deported. You know, why won't they deport me? I want to go back home and serve my time in my home country. So there's actually a thirst for that now amongst those people who are actually the criminal fraternity. You just go, you know, the system is broken, completely broken.
We were talking about the Qatari camel herder who tried to rape a woman in Chelsea Hospital. Now, he's been jailed for 7 years and will then be deported after his sentence.
Supposedly.
Supposedly.
Will he, though?
Supposedly. We'll probably let to
He'll
run
probably
free
get a
around
lawyer
the
that will
society.
say, because he's been done for rape, he can't go back to his home country.
Why is he being put in our prison? In our prisons for 7 years. Why isn't he being sent back home straight away? Let the Qataris deal with them. Let them put him in prison there if he wants. And when we've got a huge prison space crisis at the moment, and we could free up, what, 12,000 spaces, which is a very significant number, by just getting rid of the foreign criminals. Why aren't we doing that? I mean, Shabana Mahmood, whenever she gets questioned on this in the comments, she says, oh, yes, we're working on deporting the foreign offenders that are there. But it's like, you guys have been here for a year, and the only thing that you've achieved is releasing people who are actually dangerous criminals early from prison to make a few spaces. You could make far more spaces by getting rid of these foreign criminals.
I mean, also the Mail have got a piece today which I have to highlight. It's a very stupid sort of story, but it's about a guy up in Scotland who apparently pulled the scam off to pretend that he had this very, very expensive tea that he was growing in Scotland. It turned out he was just buying cheap tea and passing it off as expensive tea, but he was selling it to places like the Dorchester and Fortnum and Masons and supplying the Balmoral Hotel in Edinburgh. He was charging loads and loads of money for this stuff, saying that it was incredibly, special, brought, grown in Scotland, in a particularly new-fashioned way. It was, all very, very high-tech and all the rest of it. He's now been done for sort of basically doing a business scam. They're sending him to prison, this guy. And it seems to me that, there must be something else they could do. They don't need to take up a prison space, surely, with this guy. He's got several names. He's known otherwise as Thomas O'Brien, Tam O'Bran, Thomas Robinson. Basically, he was jailed for 3.5 years for fraud. And you just think, well, given the fact that we've got no room in the jail, supposedly, why are we jailing people like him?
Yeah, we've heard stories of judges being told to hold off on giving lengthy prison sentences to rapists because they haven't got the space.
Room.
I mean, did you say it's 3 years he's been put in
3.5 years, so he'll do probably, what, 1.5 or something?
You've got grooming gang perpetrators who have raped little kids who spend less time in prison than that, which is... the level of two-tier justice in this country is just
two-tier justice in this case, obviously
beyond belief. But just goes to show the power of marketing. You can take some absolute rubbish and put it in a fancy packet.
But you know what this also tells you is how snobbish people are in this country. Because if you tell them something's, you know, sort of posh, he's basically claimed he'd found a way to make his tea grow in half the usual time by using a special biodegradable polymer, which, as the prosecution told Stirling Sheriff Court, looked like a black bin liner. but the people from the Dorchester and Fortnum & Masons were so sure that this was going to be a top thing that they could sell that they bought into it. And it was all just BS. It was just fantasy.
Well, they're idiots then for falling for it and not actually looking at the tea. And there's also another story that Meghan Markle is also ripping people off for her tea. So she's taken the tea from some distributor.
Somebody who already makes tea?
Yes,
right.
And she's taken the exact same tea pretty much and just changed the packaging on it, and she's charging triple the price that
this is more or less what this guy did, and he's a fraudster.
If people want that tea because they like the taste of it, they could buy the exact same one for a third of the price. But apparently it's actually been a huge hit, and it's all sold out straight away on her website.
Yeah, but everything's sold out straight away on her website, because I think she only puts about 3 things on there and then goes, it's all sold out. There's such great big demand for it. Coming up, we're going to talk about ChatGPT, they're calling it, because Wes Streeting apparently wants to bring in AI, so that when you ring up the doctor's office, you don't get put on hold for ages, you just talk to a robot. Let's get a voice note from Perry.
Morning, Mike. This is what really annoys me about all politicians. All them politicians that ever sit on the front bench, they always walk away with a damn sight money than when they started. And then when everything goes to up and the rest of us are left to carry the can for all their terrible decisions, they just up sticks and move away and leave the rest of us here to deal with it. That's what I hate about politics and politicians. They're only in it to line their own nests.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. They always end up a lot wealthier, don't they, politicians, than when they went in. You know, look at Tony Blair now. He's a multi-billionaire with his own foundation. When he started, he was making, what, £55,000 a year as a backbench Labour MP. You know, they all suddenly become very, very wealthy over time.
I mean, Liz Truss was only in there for 49 days. And she's got a book and everything now and has been touring around and whatnot. I like to think that most politicians do go into the job because they actually care and they want to bring about change, and there are better jobs in the city that they could get that make them a lot of money.
I think some of them,
But I do think that the lot running the show, particularly Keir Starmer, do not have their heart in the right place. I mean, you do not see any kind of passion whatsoever from Keir Starmer for what he's doing. And the fact that he is flip-flop Starmer and changes his mind on everything and goes whichever way the wind blows, I think really shows that he doesn't have any conviction. He doesn't have any particular mission that he's come into politics
and an awful
lot
of the people
it's just a job to him. I think it is in his case.
It is, but also a lot of people in the Labour Party as well have just got into it via trade unions or, you know, via some kind of, you know, local council job into, you know, the civil service, and then into some kind of, you know, lowly, you know, paid, I don't know, special advisor type role, and then, you know, all they've done is ever work in that sort of political sphere. So they don't really have any knowledge or basis for experience of anything. You know, Jonathan Reynolds, we talk about all the time, you know, who's only ever really been a councillor, and then he moved into, you know, Labour politics. Now he's an MP, and now he's a member of the cabinet, now he's the Secretary of State.
And he claimed he was a solicitor.
And he claimed he was a solicitor when he wasn't.
Multiple places when he wasn't even qualified.
Which the solicitors, sort of governing body, have said, if you do that again, we're actually going to prosecute you because it's a prosecutable offence. And he's now in charge of the business of this country without any idea of what business actually is.
There is not a single MP in the cabinet that is an entrepreneur, and that is deeply concerning. You've got James Timpson, the prisons minister, who has run a business, fine, but the MPs there is not a single entrepreneur there.
Maybe what they should do with James Simpson, though, is put him in charge of business, not in charge of prisons. You know, what does he know about prisons other than he employs a lot of people who come out of them? That's fine.
I know. See, that's the thing. So that the cabinet is not really being advised by anyone who knows what they're talking about. And you've seen that in the government's economic policy. Rachel Reeves was so stupid that she thought if she raises 40 billion in taxes and puts up all these tax hikes, and then, as I said, we've got Angela Rayner's employment rights bill to annoy employers and whatnot, that somehow we're going to create jobs and grow the economy. It is absolutely...
And it's not working.
Well, yeah, and anyone who knows the slightest thing about business would know that that is the case. But these guys have all been mostly public servants for their entire life, so they've got no idea what they are doing.
Because it's not their money.
Yeah, a lot of people have been criticising reform, saying, oh, they haven't got everything fully costed and everything yet. Can we really trust these guys with the economy? And I'll say, OK, maybe they haven't got the plan completely thought out and, you know, word for word at this point. But let's just take a bit of common sense here. Would you rather trust someone like Zia Yusuf, a successful businessman, Nigel Farage, a successful businessman, Richard Tice, also a successful businessman? Would you trust them to run the economy, promote business growth in this country, or would you rather trust these public servants that have no business experience whatsoever?
Worse than that, worse than not having any business experience, they actually hate entrepreneurs and they hate business and they hate people that make money, because all they like is for people to be taking money off those people and making them pay more tax. That's all their mantra is about. But we'll come back on that because we've got a couple of other stories to do. Donald Trump as well. We've got a couple of clips to play. He was the star of the show yesterday at the NATO summit in The Hague. We'll bring you why. They all decided to call him Daddy. Bit strange. This is Talk.
I think it's all about the comparatives, isn't it? And when you've got, as I said in the House of Commons today, when you've got shoplifters, robbers, thieves, muggers, drug dealers, and the likes getting lesser sentences to go to jail or no jail sentences, maybe something suspended, you sort of say, well, this comparison is wrong. And you know, if you had a system where sentences were very, very long, and this was a normal sentence for a hideous, offensive tweet, well, that's in the normal comparisons.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:51. We're very nearly at the end of the first hour. Chloe Dobbs is here. We've been looking at various different stories in the papers this morning. We're going to play a bit of Donald Trump in a minute. But first, here's Andy on welfare reform.
Morning, Mike. Morning, Chloe. Yeah, my daughter, she's 16 this year. She's severely autistic, disabled. She'll never be able to live an independent life. So she'll be with us until we're not around any longer. So hopefully she'll get what she's still entitled to when she turns 16. But obviously my wife will have to be a sort of intermediate there, so she'll have to deal with her finances and stuff. So I'd like to think that all the money I've paid in over the years is going towards her and not people who just can't be asked, basically, to go to work and sit at home saying I can't work because I'm anxious or depressed and that. It really winds me up, to be honest with you, that we've got to this state. So hopefully they can do something about this and give it to the people that actually genuinely need it. Cheers, guys. Andy in Portsmouth.
Portsmouth, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, you would absolutely hope that they would do that. Morning, Mike and Chloe, says Jules in London. Given the Sun's front page, is Starmer now going to smash Putin? Good luck with that one. Yeah, let's have a look at a bit of NATO action from yesterday. This is NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte referring to Donald Trump as daddy.
They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then daddy has to sometimes use strong language to get
use strong. Every once in a while you have to use a certain word.
Yes, a bit strange that. And also a bit of an odd reference that to daddy, isn't it? But I mean, people were the lefties were all falling over themselves yesterday trying to explain why Donald Trump's being treated like a sort of king and a god, and they're all a bit sort of put off by it. They're like, why is everybody being so nice to him? And people have said, well, because, you know, why wouldn't you be? And people obviously worked out that if you challenge Donald Trump and try and be rude and horrible to him, he's not going to take it very well. Which is the same for everybody else. You know, you wouldn't expect people to start giving Joe Biden a hard time when he turned up, would you? You know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of respect for Donald Trump after he has helped destroy the nuclear facilities in Iran. have my thoughts about the ceasefire, and that I would like to see the IRGC finished off rather than allowed to continue to exist. So disagree with him somewhat there. But it is fair to say that we are in a far better place now with Donald Trump than if Kamala Harris was in charge. Kamala Harris would not have even contemplated going in and bombing those nuclear facilities. She would have just said, "Oh, we'll just talk it out, and we'll probably give them some more money as well, which they can use to fund Hamas and Hezbollah and the nuclear facilities." Exactly. Well, so thank God we've got Trump there. And so I mean that comment was very funny, and I know that a lot of you saw journalists asking questions there, and the left generally, they just can't quite cope with this new era of politics where we don't talk in normal managerial speak, and you've got Trump putting off all of these hilarious truth social posts to conduct diplomacy, and then of course dropping the F-bomb on live TV, and then this. It's quite something.
They can't deal with it. Here's Trump being asked about whether he wanted to be called Daddy.
Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you Daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No?
But he
did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
It's a strange world we're in, I must say. As I say, a lot of people can't quite get used to it. Let's do a couple of quick other stories before we go. According to Wes Streeting, he wants to introduce AI doctors. They're going to call it ChatGPT, which is when you ring up, instead of getting, you are now number 7,085 on the waiting list, you can talk to an AI operative. And I suppose in the same way that you would punch it into Google.
People already use ChatGPT to put in their health problems and figure out what they need to do. But
does it work though? Because the trouble I find with and I haven't used AI I think very extensively, right? And it might be an age thing, but whenever I ask a question, I'm sometimes just doing it out of curiosity to see what the answer is, and the answers are sometimes pretty vague, and the answers are sometimes pretty sort of nebulous. They don't really give you an answer at all. So I'm not sure that they're quite yet medical. I think he's talking about proper sort of medically trained robots, if you like, so they can actually give you an answer rather than you might have cancer but we're not sure.
Yeah, well, one would expect that this system will hopefully.
Well, you say that, right? The NHS.
Well, that's the thing, is I am a bit sceptical because, I mean, look at the last time the NHS tried to make an app. Do you remember when they had the NHS COVID app and it was a complete disaster didn't really work at all when you try and use any government website, and it is a total mess. I'm friends with a person who works in tech, and he's helping them. The NHS developed AI software for GPs spend loads of time writing up patient notes after appointments, but this will essentially just like transcribe it and summarise it just with AI, so that will save a lot of time. And as you say, loads of people spend ages on the phone to talk to someone who probably in a lot of cases could give them quite a straightforward answer. As long as it is the case with this system that you can get through to a human if you don't get the satisfactory answer that you want, then that's fine. We all find it very frustrating when you call a helpline for something and you cannot get through to a human being. So it's important that they design it correctly. And they give you that thing on the screen.
Would you like to chat to Cara, whoever it is? This from Andy in Nottingham. He says, "Morning, Mike. Talking of ChatGPT, I went into my doctor's yesterday to order a repeat prescription. The receptionist told me I needed to call up, even though I was stood right in front of her. This is how mad these people are now. They think they can turn people away because they don't want to work for a living. When I told her I didn't want to call up after a short blank stare while she was processing the next steps, she did order me a box of tablets." I mean, this is the trouble, isn't it? You turn up somewhere and they go, "No, you can't come in, you have to call." I had that experience at a police station once. I can't remember what I think I had to go and see somebody in a police station about something. And there was a front doorbell, but there was nobody inside the police station. You had to ring the front doorbell and talk to somebody who wasn't in there, who would call somebody who was in there to tell them to come out and answer the door.
It's crazy.
I mean,
there is so much inefficiency in these systems. That's why I'm very much welcoming any use of AI that can cut down the costs in the NHS. We absolutely have to make it more efficient because, I mean, the cost of it just keeps ballooning. And ballooning.
It's mad, isn't it?
It's not like the waiting lists get any shorter and the treatment gets better. It just gets worse.
It just gets worse.
We can't keep going down this road. If we're going to keep the NHS and not ditch it, then they've got to do something to make it work and be more efficient.
Absolutely. A couple of papers. This actually appeared first yesterday, I think, in The Sun. But as we merge up towards Wimbledon weekend for the first time, Marks & Spencer have brought out a strawberries and cream sandwich, which is not quite as bad as it sounds. It's actually cream cheese. as opposed to actually, you know, clotted cream or the sort of cream. Would you eat a strawberry and cheese sandwich?
I think it sounds quite delicious.
Really?
I mean, a lot of people say, oh, that's weird putting something sweet on bread, but not only have they made it sweet bread for this sandwich,
right,
but at home we put jam on toast. We do peanut butter and jam sandwiches.
Yeah.
I've got a sweet tooth. I'd love that.
So you would have one of those?
Yeah, I'd consider it.
Are you a fan of Wimbledon?
Yeah, I'm going to go on Monday.
Oh, are you?
I'm going to have to stand in the queue like a pleb because my mum and brother have tickets, but
right.
I'm going to have to...
Yeah.
I did that last year.
Do you see, we did a thing yesterday. We turned out the man who was at the front of the queue at Glastonbury got there on Tuesday, and you would be not surprised to know his name is Christopher Beard. He's from Cambridge, and he's a chutney and jam maker.
Mm.
And that's the kind of people that go to spend 300 quid for a weekend in Glastonbury, where it's going to absolutely pee it down with rain, apparently. There's going to be storms, there's going to be hot sun, people are going to get sunburnt
That's
and
England
soaked.
for you.
And that is England for you. Chloe, thank you very much indeed. Chloe Dobbs there with a look at the morning papers. We'll be back with James Price and a whole load more stories about this hapless government. How much longer can they carry on for, limping ever further away from the people and closer to the cliff's edge? This is Morning Glory, back after the news.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us carry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 7. It's Thursday the 26th of June. We are looking out the window and seeing some rather pleasant weather, it has to be said. It's going to be lovely and sunny today here in the southeast. I know that doesn't always cover the entire country. We've got Wimbledon weekend coming up, the first one of the year, of course. We've got Glastonbury weekend as well for all those champagne socialists. I dare say there won't be too many people going down to Glastonbury this morning listening to Talk, but if you are, welcome. We've got somebody listening in a cruise ship in South Korea. Joe has sent me a tweet just now saying, listening for a cruise ship in South Korea, Mike, enjoying the show. Thank you very much indeed. We've got people from all over the world listening to this show. People in Dubai, people in Los Angeles, people in Sydney, Australia, people in Hong Kong, people, of course, all over the place on holiday in Europe, in the Canaries, in Madeira, in Spain, in Portugal. This is the place to be. It's the home of common sense. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It still makes absolutely and utter perfect sense. And if you want to get in touch, you know what to do. 0344 499 1000. Send us a voice note.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn.
Morning, Mike. Joan from Norfolk.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark from Derby here.
Morning, Mike. Great show as always. It's Kelly here, somewhere on the A5 stuck in traffic in the Midlands.
They don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I'm afraid that, once again, is the description of the Labour government this morning. They are all over the place. Lots and lots of stories on the front pages that Keir Starmer is getting back down on the benefits bill, which is about to be voted upon in the House of Commons on Tuesday. At the moment, it looks as though the rebellion will knock the government for 6, and the rebellion from the backbenches, from MPs who don't want it to go through, has now reached a massive 123, which, of course, is more than enough to derail any government bill which they wish to put through. It's extraordinary that in just less than a year, Labour are so bad that they can't even put their own bills through because their own people don't want them to do so. So the rebellion is literally going to be a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister, and quite frankly, he's obviously not going to pass it. But according to the Telegraph and various other papers this morning, he's now going to water down the benefits bill in order to so-called help those people who would vote against it. Is the thing going to go ahead on Tuesday? We can't be sure, but absolutely what we can tell you is that Keir Starmer has got the skids under him. Morgan McSweeney, the guy who supposedly created this Labour project in Downing Street, has also got a big target on his back, and a lot of people think he won't survive the summer. Coming up, we'll take your calls, 0344 499 1000. You can text us, of course, on 87222. You can tweet us at talkTV. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Five minutes past 7. This from Tony in Hampshire on AI. Is it just another expensive obstacle to seeing your GP? We are already struggling to access our GPs. I order meds online, authorised immediately, but ask for a blood test or an appointment. I swear the surgery staff are working from Bermuda. Well, I probably might not be surprised. I know Kevin O'Sullivan told me he had a friend who was a doctor who actually works full-time in France and only sees people on video link and doesn't actually have any proper patients that come in to see her. Steve says, my GP is trying to persuade patients to let them use an AI system called Heidi, which supposedly takes notes, writes reports and can generate prescriptions based on their chat with the patient. My experience is that most AI voice systems keep saying, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. And I also wonder if the system is because we have so many foreign-trained GPs whose mastery of English isn't the best. Well, that could be true too. We'll talk about AI GP as it's planned by Wes Streeting coming up in the rest of the show, because there's plenty to talk about. But let's talk now to James Price, former government advisor, and get his view of the state of the nation, because it ain't great. James, very good morning to you.
Hello, sir, and hello to everybody all around the world. I love there's someone listening from a cruise in South Korea. That's superb.
Isn't that brilliant? Yeah, the wonders of modern technology. Of course, you can't get a signal in Sussex, but there we are. I mean, that's another story. Let's talk about the state of Keir Starmer. You know, he's had a fairly embarrassing week so far, starting off just before the weekend where he was absolutely sure that Donald Trump was not going to hit Iran at all, and was quite dismissive of a journalist who asked him if he thought that was going to happen. He then couldn't admit that he was in favour of the strike against Iran because he wasn't sure whether he was for or against the Islamic Republic that likes to, knock women's eyes out when they've shown their hair to somebody they shouldn't have. And then nobody in his government could say whether they actually agreed with it. And then he went to NATO yesterday and kind of looked, for all intents and purposes, like Donald Trump's lapdog, didn't he?
Yeah, it's very, very peculiar. People who are watching the live stream there will see this moment where Trump opens up a folder with the US-UK trade deal, such that it is a very watered-down version of what it might have been, and then and Starmer kneels down to pick the papers up. He got a bit of criticism for that as well. I thought that was perhaps him just being overly English and polite, and what else to do in that situation. But it doesn't help the imagery, as you say, that he's just following Trump around wherever he goes, whether it's the G7 in Canada or NATO now, and he's always kind of cozying up and sitting next to him. Well, I think that's great. I think we should definitely have that great special relationship with the US. But as you say, at the same time, you can't do that and then fail to say that keeping the world's most awful regime from having its hands on nuclear weapons isn't a good thing. Right. And why is Starmer unable to say that? Well, it's the domestic political situation here in Britain, because Labour is now so requires the votes of people in this country who prefer, let's say, Iran perhaps to Israel, and for one very specific reason of who lives in Israel. And this is the disastrous sort of situation that Labour have got themselves into, being held hostage by people who live in this country who've got no love for the West whatsoever.
Right, it is extraordinary, isn't it? But of course, the other problem for Keir Starmer in that sort of international arena is that because of what happened over the last sort of week or 10 days, it's now clear that he's not really in the loop. And Donald Trump, you know, a lot of the lefties have been complaining that Donald Trump's being treated like a king as he wanders around and sort of straddles the world and gets what he wants everywhere he goes, because he's decisive, because he does what he says he's going to do, and he speaks the language of the common man and the common woman, and people like him for it. Whether or not the left establishment will ever get used to that is probably a question that we can't answer. But they can't stand it, can they? They can't stand the fact that people are being nice to Donald Trump. They think because he's such a horrible, ghastly, terrible man, everyone should be really rude to him. It's such a double standard.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it does show that when you have someone like Trump, who, for whatever you might think about him, is a masterful communicator in all kinds of ways and says it like it is, and actually does act on things. Let's not forget you had just Biden and Obama and Bush and all others, presidents, I think Clinton as well, all saying, oh, Iran can never get a bomb, and never doing anything about it. Right. Then Trump comes along and actually does it. And I think you then see how how wooden and how 2D Starmer looks compared to Trump. But all of the Labour front bench are like this. Even when they actually do seem to care about something, they can't convince even their own reflections that they do care about it. Starmer, for example, I think does actually like something like football, and yet he talks about it, and it makes it sound like it's the most boring topic. Yeah. And I think it goes back to the fact that these guys just don't believe in anything, and that's why they get themselves into so many problems domestically.
Right, and which is why he's now possibly likely to sort of water down or U-turn yet again on yet another big subject, which was supposed to be one of the cornerstones of their first year in power, which was to get rid of some welfare spending. And only £5 billion is at stake here, but it looks as though they won't even be able to get that, because the backbench rebellion is such that Starmer's really looking as though he's a busted flush. You know, Dan Hodges, I always refer to as a man that started out being quite supportive of this government, is now more critical of them than I am. And he's basically saying that Starmer's finished. And it's all over for him, because Morgan McSweeney, the guy who is credited with getting Starmer into Downing Street, credited with getting rid of Sue Gray, credited with the project and being the sort of great genius behind it all, has upset everybody and has knocked over all the apple carts, and now people are after his blood.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. As you say, like £5 billion might be a lot to you and me. It might be a lot to the person listening in South Korea. But in terms of the overall budget for the UK budget is something like 1.2, 1.3 trillion pounds. An absolutely extraordinary sum, by the way. And I don't think we get our money's worth by any stretch of the imagination. But they've managed to walk into this political minefield, upset absolutely everybody, over, as you say, £5 billion. It's a very tiny sum. Right. It's a lot less than the department even says that it loses every year in fraud from universal credit and things like that. It's even actually less than we spend on, your listeners will hopefully pull over when I'm about to say this because it will make you so mad. We spend about £1 billion a year on benefits for foreigners in this country. Yeah. So they come here and sit there on benefits. It's £1 billion a month. So almost 2.5 times the amount of money that these changes will actually save. So they're not serious about actually getting this bill under control anyway. The backbenchers are not serious about understanding the dire of our finances. And if they can't get this thing done, what is the market going to go and do? And say, actually, you know what? We're not going to let you guys borrow from us anymore. And we're going to have a really, really serious economic crisis on our hands, all because Starmer has mismanaged this so badly.
Well, and not only that, but the Labour MPs and the backbenchers in particular are seeing the absolute and utter failure of this government at first hand, because, not only are they failing to win over the public, not only are they failing to actually to carry out any of the policies that they started out wanting to do, but they can't even hold their own party together. And a new poll in the Times, which is coming out through YouGov, it's the first MRP poll apparently since the actual landslide victory last year, has got them literally losing so many seats that you wouldn't even believe it. If the vote was held today, if the election was held today, the party would lose 233 of the 412 seats that it won. So Labour would be knocked into second place with only 170 278 seats. Reform would go from 5 to 271. I mean, it seems unbelievable, but I can see it happening.
Yeah, I'm actually, when I see these sorts of polls, I'm surprised that Labour isn't even lower.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, we're not even 1 year in. For regular people will know, I'm probably one of the most partisan people in the country. Even I didn't think they'd be this bad.
No.
This quickly, right? It is absolutely extrauraordinary, as you said. And I've got a lot of sympathy for this chap, Morgan McSweeney, who is Starmer's chief of staff.
You're about the only person in Britain that has, I think.
Well, he seems one of the few people in the Labour Party who understands how bad the state is at getting things done, how bad the state's finances are, and yet he's now trying to deal with a bunch of people in the Labour Party who the only thing it seems they want to do is to still give far too much money out to people who don't necessarily deserve it and kill babies and old people. That seems to be the only thing that this Labour Parliamentary Party is interested in doing.
Yeah.
It's not a great look for the next 4 years, is it?
It really isn't. And I mean, just to show you that they've never gone too far away from the nanny state scenario, piece in the Telegraph this morning saying ministers are now considering a crackdown on alcohol advertising. You know, because of all the problems that we've got in this world, let's stop advertising alcohol before 9 o'clock. And they're still obsessed with the fact that there's a watershed on TV. Nobody's watching that. Nobody who wants to have a drink aged 14 is doing it because they've seen an advert on television.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it? You know, the level of crisis that we have in so many areas, no economic growth, spiralling debt problems, broiling social tensions, mass migration, horrendous levels of fighting age men coming over here. You know, the point that you're getting people in focus groups genuinely saying that they think that civil war or civil conflict is coming to the country, Russia attacking, all these sorts of things. And they would go, do you know what let's spend our time doing? Tinkering around, making it a bit more difficult to work out whether you want a Heineken tonight or not. Absolutely extraordinary. And of course, this goes with Sadiq Khan banning various adverts on the tube.
Yeah.
There was a comedian who wasn't allowed to advertise him eating a piece of cake.
I remember that.
Cake is too high in sugar and salt. You couldn't have a very attractive lady in a bikini saying, are you beach body ready?
Right.
Because that might be offensive to people who weren't beach body ready. Now, this is just completely ludicrous. And I'll tell people this is an idea called anarcho-tyranny, which is this idea that it's very hard to do the sort of fixing of the economy and all the rest of it. So they're not even going to try and do that. Instead, they'll double and triple down on all this other stuff and make life that bit more difficult to feel like they're actually doing something. And that something they're doing is just making all of our lives that much more miserable.
Yeah, just tinkering around the edges, as you say, with the fun police sort of making it impossible for anybody to have a good time. I watched a report yesterday about a pub down in Greenwich. You might know it, called the Trafalgar. If you walk down the sort of the side of the river from the Cutty Sark and you walk all the way down around by the Greenwich Observatory, there's this lovely pub which has been there for hundreds of years, and they've got a load of tables down by the river, by the walkway, you know, the sort of the towpath, if you like, which have got plenty of room left where people, apparently the local council, which is of course the Labour Council, have come to the pub owner and the pub landlord and said, you're going to have to remove all of those tables, which have been there for years, right? Why? Oh, because it's a hazard for people walking past, which of course it isn't.
I don't even know why do they come up with these ideas. You have to be, as you say, actively hating this country and hating people wanting to have a nice time. I think that the Labour Council in Westminster have now tried to designate quiet nights in Soho, of all places. If people move to Soho thinking what I want is a quiet little...
if you want a quiet night, you move to the countryside. You know, it's middle of London, for heaven's sake.
Right, and people's lives in London now are pretty difficult. You know, you've got people who are taxed an enormous amount of money. It's not very safe out. Every day you see more mad stories of people attacking someone for their watch or stealing their phone out of their hands. You've got more and more criminals going around. You've got more and more stabbings and all the rest of it. And at the end of this horrible day, you know, you want to go for a quiet pint with your mate to try and take your mind off things. You know, Starmer and Rachel Reeves have managed to ruin that for you as well. These people cannot get voted out of office quickly enough.
Yeah. Meanwhile, as if to say, we told you so, the migrant alert is even worse this morning because the Sun have got another story in which they're basically saying that more than 18,000 people who have arrived in dinghies so far this year from the illegal migrant brigade are actually being helped to do so by the likes of Vladimir Putin and other, you know, states which would have wishes to harm us. Well, we've been saying this for ages, that, you know, this is very well organised. These organised gangs of criminals are doing something very, very clever, and they're probably getting quite a bit of help to do so. Because I said this ages ago, that if you're moving people from sub-Saharan sub-Saharan Africa to Venezuela to get them to cross the border in Tijuana. You know, that takes a little bit more than a dodgy guy with a, you know, with a rubber dinghy and a packet of cigarettes and some cash. You know, that is an organised move, and that has been what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we've seen this not just happening in the small boat crossings to Britain, and not just in America as well. You see it on the other borders of Europe. Poland has had to erect various fences in Austria too, and the Russians are doing this. What does it tell you, by the way, right? For some of the people in this country, the kind of useful idiots who go, oh, actually, let's have all the asylum seekers in the world. Let's keep going until we can barely fit anybody else in, all the rest of it. It'll be great. They're all the next Shakespeare in waiting and all of this kind of rot. That Putin thinks that it's more effective as a weapon to destroy our country, to fill our country full of these sorts of people, than actually invading or declaring war. Right? What does he know about these people that we don't? Oh, yeah, he doesn't have a kind of misty-eyed idea that all these people are just kind of nice young Englishmen waiting to happen. The fact is that most of them are fighting-age men from very, very alien cultures. And you're now seeing police forces having to go to these asylum hotels and say, in this country, you have to treat women as well as men, and you're not allowed to go and sexually harass them. And you've got these guys go, oh, I didn't actually know that. Right. These are the sorts of people that we're bringing into this country.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? Great to talk to you, James. Thank you very much indeed. James Price, former government advisor there, talking complete and utter sense as ever. Let's get a voice note from Brian.
Hello, Mike. Brian from Southend. Rainy down in Hastings as I drive down here for deliveries. Anyway, on Starmer. Now, I've watched a few things yesterday on the news and all that other, and listened to all the news clips. He is a little boy lost, isn't he? Look at him at that NATO meeting. He's just like the little kid in the playground who wants someone to talk to him. He's an idiot. He embarrasses himself. He embarrasses the country. Look at him trying to get in the photo thing, trying to get next to Donald Trump. You know, he makes out as though Donald's his best mate. You know, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing for this country and for him and the Labour Party.
He does, and standing next to Trump, who's quite a bit taller than him, doesn't help either, because he looks like he's a sort of pint-sized character, staring out into space, trying to look like he's important, and kind of trying to fix his gilades on somebody or other. Very, very strange. One here from Alan, who says, Alan from Middlesbrough here. I'm now in Montenegro, where there's lots of climate change. Note, the talkTV app doesn't work in this utopia, so I'm using YouTube. Very good. Well done. Welcome to Alan from Middlesbrough in Montenegro. Welcome to a lot of people around the world listening, watching this show as well. It's coming up to 7:21. This, of course, is the home of common sense. Coming next, Andrew Griffith MP.
Unfortunately, we had just a few months ago, several times, Putin using language suggesting that if Ukraine didn't give in, or if Europe didn't stop helping Ukraine, do remember we have tactical nuclear weapons, so we have to be sure we can't be subject to what I would call nuclear blackmail. Yeah. It's where a country like Russia, with these small nuclear weapons, that can kill thousands of people, says, unless you do what I demand, I'll start using them against you. So this is about deterrence, and I think it's a sensible decision.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:23. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along. Morning, Mike. Starmer telling us he won a landslide because the public wanted change, says Paul in Fife. He's bang on, but not in the way he suggests. We did want change, but we didn't want our society changed. We didn't want two-tier justice. We don't want heat pumps. We don't want our country invaded. We don't want to be taxed to death. Very good point. And Steve says, might be Glastonbury coming up this weekend. I know of at least 3 people on benefits who are going, all are regular drug takers and drinkers. I really think it's time random drug testing should be a rule to claiming job seekers allowance or many of those other benefits. Well, I'm sure people would agree with that. The benefits bill, of course, is causing huge problems for the Labour government. It looks as though if they do go ahead with the vote on Tuesday, they will more than likely water it down to appease their backbenchers who are probably going to rebel against the government, causing a real shock and possibly a vote of confidence. Let's talk to Andrew Griffith MP, Shadow Business and Trade Secretary. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Always good to be here at the home of common sense.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Hopefully a very nice day beckons, but not a very nice day for Keir Starmer as he returns from NATO in The Hague, where he didn't really look as though he knew what he was doing. And when he comes back here, it doesn't look as though he knows what he's doing either.
No, and I think it's not just he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. You know, he's on the world stage, but when it actually comes to action and support for our US allies taking out an aggressive aspirant nuclear power, you know, he's not in control. He's nowhere to be seen. And when it comes to tackling some of the really big issues about how we get economic growth, how we have proper welfare reform, he can't take his party with him. So we're left with the same old stagflation, low growth, and ever more spending by the taxpayer. And he won't rein in his Chancellor.
No, and there doesn't seem to be any form of hope at the moment, anyway, looking at what their plans are for the economy, that they're going to create the growth that they said they would do. Because even the defence spending that they've promised, it looks as though the first act of that defence spending budget is to pay a load of money to America for a load of jets.
Yeah, look, I'm a personal fan of the F-35A. I think it's a very capable fighter and something that's good to have in the UK's armoury. Goodness knows, you know, we don't have enough of those sort of platforms, and unfortunately under the government there is no real money being set aside to rearm us properly, commensurate with the scale of the challenges. But look, the real problem, again, as you say, is the government came in without a plan. Look, we made some mistakes. I'm making a speech later today talking about the things that we could have done and should be doing about how we're going to get economic growth back. I'm hugely optimistic about the latent potential of this nation, our ability to become one of the most prosperous countries in the world again, but that's going to need somebody with a plan for radical change. And we can see that despite this government's huge majority, you know, they could have got stuck in and done even just some of the things that are needed to be done. They've got no plan, and now he's jumping around at the whim of his most left-wing backbenchers.
And with U-turn after U-turn after U-turn coming, I mean, we've also got coming down the pipeline this Angela Rayner employment rights bill, which apparently an awful lot of employers are very worried about, very concerned about, particularly small businesses in this country, who are going to be sort of hogtied by it, aren't they?
They're absolutely right to be concerned. You know, this is going to see trade unions who've written this bill recolonise the private sector, a new trade union right to roam, to turn up in any business and demand access, and a new regulator that even if a single employee doesn't complain, can go on fishing trips and expeditions, all funded by the taxpayer, against employers. Now, if you are serious about welfare reform, and this is one of the things we've said to the government, we would support welfare reform if it's serious about getting people back into work. But you can't get back people into work if there aren't jobs, and you can't have jobs if every business in the country is fighting shy of hiring people because they'll end up in some employment tribunal waiting years for a specious case to be heard.
Yes, and that is the problem, isn't it? But I mean, in terms of the likelihood of all of these measures going through, what's the fear that you have in terms of, you know, exactly what will be the effects immediately?
Well, we're already seeing the effects. So every single business organisation has talked about the impact on employment, number of jobs. For each one of the 9 months that this government's been in power, unemployment's either risen or stayed at its same high level. And we're starting to see, and we will continue to see, in my view, unemployment tick up. We left them a good legacy on jobs, but if we don't create the jobs, there's no growth, and there's no opportunity to get people off those expanding welfare bills and into work.
I mean, it's true to say, and you'll probably tell me that a lot of it was down to COVID, but it's true to say that the large welfare bill did grow quite substantially under the Tories in the last 14 years. Much of it since COVID, with many, many more people claiming that they've got anxiety, that they've got mental health problems, that, you know, that particular side of benefit claiming has ballooned. What would you do if you were going to fix that now?
Well, aside from having jobs and growth in the economy, we would have to tighten a lot of the criteria. And as you say, the significant increases come not from people who were disabled in the sense of a physical disability, that you know, can't climb stairs, haven't got a leg or something, but this whole area of anxiety and mental health. Now, I'm not dismissing that, but often the best remedy for that isn't to be alone on a life of welfare, but to be in a supportive workplace engaging with other people. And that's about the criteria. It's about removing from GPs the ability to write sick notes that get people into the welfare system and have that done by a dedicated agency. It's also about removing some of the risk to welfare claimants if they try a job. And we had plans in place to reform that. So I'm not going to fully hide behind COVID. You know, this is the moment to, you know, be honest and talk about things that we didn't get right. We were slow to grasp this significant increase in welfare bills.
Yeah, and because we had a call from one of our regular listeners, Judith in West Yorkshire, who said, you know, she's been filling out for some other people forms to apply for sort of PIP, for example, and it says if you're obese you can apply, if you're a drug taker you can apply, if you're an alcoholic you can apply. You know, it seems as though those rules were set when you guys were in charge.
Well, look, they've evolved over time, and you know, the new Conservative Party, reformed Conservative Party under new management, recognises that it is not fair on the taxpayer to allow a burgeoning spend on welfare. It's true on other areas. We've got to reduce the burden of government in this country. It's holding us all back, and it's crippling us with high taxes, which Rachel Reeves looks like she's going to put up yet again this autumn. That is no way for us to run the sort of prosperous economy we want. So in terms of welfare, for those people that can work, should be in work, we will need a little bit more stick and a little bit less carrot as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a new poll out this morning in the Times. It's YouGov's first MRP poll since the general election, since the landslide victory by Labour. Labour take a massive beating, going down to 178 seats from 412. But so do the Tories. The Tories go down, according to this poll, from 121 seats at the general election last year to 46. Are you worried that your message isn't getting through?
Look, not worried, but not complacent either. We've got a lot of work to do. What we've seen is the absolute collapse of this government. They were elected on a loveless landslide to start off with. They got lots of seats because of the first-past-the-post system, and they've already managed to hemorrhage a significant amount of that support. And perhaps it's no surprise that, you know, just over 9 months in, that's not flocking back to our party because of our recent experience in government. But what it says to me is people are fed up. and they're right to be fed up. The system isn't working. I came from business into politics and Parliament to be part of a group trying to fix that system, and what I am my party leader are doing is telling some of these honest, sometimes hard truths, things that people haven't confronted for many years or decades, and that's part of the process of getting a really credible government with a proper set of plans that are actually going to address this stuff.
Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Griffith MP, their Shadow Business and Trade Secretary. That news, by the way, on the new reform surge, you might say, gives them by far the highest number of seats of all of the parties and the ability probably to form the next government, should that be the result in 2029, if not before. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. It's James from Blackburn. What is wrong with this government? What is wrong with them? They are really bad. I mean, like the Tories, when it got to like 14 years last year, yeah, everyone was like, wow, they're all over the place. But this lot feel like it's been 20 years. And why does Keir Starmer's mouth, every clip that you show, when he's listening to people or he's finished talking, his mouth is pursed yet slightly open. It looks like he's whistling. Fixing the foundations, smashing the gangs. He's horrible.
He is really just not good at all, is he? Just not working. Absolutely ridiculous. Morning, Mike. We know Starmer has to do these cuts, so some can go on defence and the rest will definitely go on supporting all these migrants flooding our country. They lie and gaslight. They will push thousands into poverty with no jobs to go to either, says Zoe in Lancashire. Morning, Mike. If these 121 MPs actually have a backbone, and I doubt it, if they vote against his bill, will he call them far right, says Dave in Aberdeen. Well, you see, the thing is that they're calling him far right because the backbenchers are saying, hang on a minute, we don't want a Labour Prime Minister who's come into power to cut people's benefits. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. Mark in West Sussex says, morning, Mike. I see the rape gang inquiry has disappeared again. I'm betting a neutered inquiry is announced 5 minutes before the summer recess in true LIBOR fashion. Well, interesting you say that, because it has all gone a bit quiet on that front. We'll just have to see precisely what Keir Starmer says when he does return to the House of Commons. I've been saying for the best part of this week, why has he not come before the House of Commons to explain, one, what our policy is internationally, which we still don't know, when it comes to supporting American attacks on Iran, and number two, what on earth is happening with the rape gang inquiry, and three, what on earth is he doing to stop the boats? Because he needs to start doing that, surely. 7:35.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 7:36. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when it's time for Julie Hartley-Brewer. And Sarah from Birmingham says this: I do hope that you're keeping well. I have to vent about PMQs, Mike. It's more like watching Live at the Apollo nowadays. It's all about who can get the most one-liners in. There's no substance or seriousness to it anymore. This is the half an hour each week whereby the nation can watch and hear Q&As about issues that affect us, that are of concern to us, and to which we want to have proper and truthful answers. Instead, it's just a back and forth of insults and laughter. Super frustrating. Well, I think an awful lot of what has happened to that particular, segment of the parliamentary democracy is that it has become very performative. I think quite a lot of people enjoy the toing and froing. Quite a lot of people enjoy the entertainment value of it. But you're right, it should also be a place where the Prime Minister is held to account and or his representative, it happens to be Angela Rayner, where she is held to account. The trouble is, the biggest problem we've got is that they're not doing it. You know, Prime Minister Keir Starmer doesn't like answering questions. Angela Rayner doesn't particularly like entertaining Tories. You know, so it doesn't really work at the moment for the people of this country who want to know what exactly is going on. We're going to talk to Sir James Cleverly now, MP, former Foreign Secretary, of course, because surely it has to be said, James, very good morning to you. It's time Keir Starmer turned up in Parliament and told us what this government's policy is on a whole bunch of stuff, isn't it?
Well, it is quite remarkable, Mike, that yesterday was the second week on a trot that the Prime Minister wasn't at PMQs. Now, this week he was at NATO leaders in The Hague, which I think is an important reason not to be in the House. But last week he could have come back in time. I think he's hiding from scrutiny. As you say, he doesn't like answering questions at the best of times. But there are really serious things going on at the moment in the Middle East, in Ukraine, with regard to defence, with regard to our own border control, with regard to a whole load of issues affecting your listeners and my constituents. And the guy is really just phoning it in. And the country deserves better. We deserve answers, and we deserve a proper update from the Prime Minister on what action he is taking to deal with these issues.
Well, exactly right, because apart from anything else, one of the more bizarre aspects of the last sort of week, if you like, in foreign affairs was the government's complete inability to actually comment on whether they supported the US attack on Iran. You know, they deliberately avoided it, and Keir Starmer didn't appear before anybody to answer the question. David Lammy couldn't answer it, and neither could Luke Pollard. And it seems to me that we deserve, as a nation, some indication of what would happen if America decides to hit Iran again.
Well, the thing that really struck me is that I listened to David Lammy's radio interview. I saw clips of Luke Pollard's radio interview. I went to the statement that David Lammy made to the House of Commons, where he was speaking for well over an hour. And throughout those interviews and that parliamentary process, we still didn't get to the bottom of what the UK's position is on this geostrategic issue. They couldn't bring themselves to say that they supported our closest ally in the world. They didn't bring themselves to say that they felt it was right to take action against Iran trying to acquire a nuclear weapon. And Iran, let's remind ourselves, is a country that is dedicated to eradicating Israel completely. And they're using so many words, but they're saying so little.
Right, and that I think is very, very shameful and completely inappropriate for any government to do, because these are very important times that we live through. I mean, Keir Starmer loves putting out tweets in which he says, like he did last night, you know, my mission is to secure safety for Britain and to make Britain safe. And he means militarily, but we're clearly not safe on the streets of this country for an awful lot of reasons. For many reasons, the front page of the Sun today saying that, you know, Russia may well be involved in part of the organisational train in getting migrants to come to Western Europe to destabilise it.
Well, we have seen that Russia uses a whole range of techniques to try and destabilise the country that it sees as enemies. And that includes the UK. But we've seen in Europe, Russia, Belarus, herding migrants to the borders of our Eastern European allies to try and destabilise the situation there. We've seen that actually in Syria, where they've pushed migrants towards the border with Turkey to try and destabilise that country. So this is no surprise to me at all. And the simple truth is that Keir Starmer will come back to the UK and he will start bragging about this 5% on defence and security spending. But he's been dragged kicking and screaming to sign up to that. I was calling for the UK to spend 3% on defence this time last year. And the Labour government finally, through duress, said that at some distant point in the future they may nudge defence spending up by perhaps 0.25%. President Trump has pushed the UK and other countries into making this commitment. But the question now will be to see where the money's going to come from. Will Keir Starmer get a grip of borders and asylum hotels? Will he get a grip of the grossly inflated welfare budget? Will he actually put the money behind this commitment, or is it all just hot air and empty words?
Well,
I I know which one I think it is.
Well, that's the trouble. I mean, his 5% kind of tally has already been questioned in terms of where some of that money is coming from, because he clearly, as we know from the benefits bill fiasco, he doesn't have the money. You know, if he did, he'd be already putting it where his mouth is. But he's sort of coagulating various different funds, isn't he? He's talking about getting some money from intelligence over here, getting some other money over there from procurement, spending it here, there and everywhere. And also, it's a very long way off. I mean, nothing is going to increase at all until minimum 2027 and probably 2029.
Well, if you don't have a plan to pay for your policies, you don't have policies. And we're also seeing on the front page of papers Keir Starmer's complete lack of authority. He can't even seem to get very, very modest reduction in our welfare bill through his own backbenchers. He is being bullied by his own backbenchers. And we have said as Conservatives, the welfare system does need complete reworking. We've said that. We have said to the Labour government that if they start the job of sorting out the welfare system, they will get our support. And we've said if they commit to their promises of reducing the bill, getting people back into work, and not putting up taxes in the autumn, then we will vote for this bill. But it seems they can't even commit to their own commitments.
Right.
And this is the problem. We've seen throughout his career, Keir Starmer has U-turned after U-turn after U-turn after U-turn. He's going to do it on the welfare bill that's meant to be coming through the House of Commons next week. And my fear is that if he is still in charge, and frankly, it's a very big if, he's going to U-turn on this defence commitment as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he does that. Just one final thing, James. There's a big poll out this morning. Times published it just about 6 o'clock this morning. First MRP poll from YouGov since the last election in July of last year. Tories taking a hell of a shellacking, according to this, from 121 seats currently down to 46. I asked Andrew Griffith the same question. Are you worried that you're becoming a bit of an irrelevance as a party?
Well, we recognise that we got given a real slap from the voters at the last general election, and they're still grumpy with us, and we recognise that. Now, we need to earn back their trust. It's a long time between now and the next general election. We need to do two things. One is to show the incompetence of this Labour government. Now, frankly, Keir Starmer is doing that all by himself. And the other job, and we are working on that, is to make sure that the British people realise that we are the only credible alternative to this Labour government. They might flirt with the Lib Dems, they might flirt with Reform, they might flirt with the Greens, but none of those other parties are credible in their ability to actually form a government and run the country. Now, it's easy for me to say that, but as a party under Kemi, we need to prove that. And I am sure that as we do that over the next weeks, months and years, we will regain our position in the polls and put ourselves into a position to form a government at the next general election.
OK. So, James Cleverly, thank you very much indeed, former Foreign Secretary there, saying absolutely the Labour government is doing a fantastic job of proving their own incompetence. I think he's right about that. But is he actually right about saying that only the Tories can be the sort of credible alternative to Labour? Because if you're a Reform voter, or if you're even thinking about voting Reform, you must be wondering how it is that they're going to get from 5 MPs to 271 in the next three years. That's basically what the poll says they're going to do, which is an extraordinary thing. I think they can do it. Is it credible? It remains to be seen. We'll talk more about that coming up. Let's get a voice note from Mark on the Qatari camel herder.
Good morning, Mike and Chloe. It's Mark in Lancashire. Just on the ridiculous subject of this Qatari camel herder who tried to rape the woman in the NHS hospital. Not only should he be deported, he's been sentenced to 7 years in jail, but let's go back a bit further. Why was he in the country in the first place? He's in an NHS hospital having heart surgery at taxpayers' expense. Why was he here? Why is it up to us to pay for Qatari camel-herding rapists to have heart surgery? It's absolutely ridiculous. This is how far we've come. No, you know, nobody knows why they're here. Get rid of them. We shouldn't be giving them heart surgery. These people are nothing to do with us. They've not contributed. It's not our problem.
Mark, listen, I feel your pain. I take your point. It is a mad situation. However, I don't know for sure if we were actually paying for his surgery. I don't know whether in Qatar they've got some kind of, healthcare system which allows for their people to travel abroad and get healthcare wherever they need it. It may well be that it was a private deal. I don't know. But even so, as you say, even if they want to pay to come here, by the very least token gesture, they should be told when they get here, by the way, you're coming here for some medical help. Please try not to break the law, and when you're in the hospital, try not to rape anyone. See if you can manage to get through that. Is that okay with you? For heaven's sake. 7:47.
What you've just proposed, kick down the doors, get them out of the country, or make them answer for themselves, that wouldn't have even been controversial 10 years ago. That's what nations do. They go after people who are here illegally, and certainly if they're working illegally, and they say, what are you doing here? Australia does it, France does it, Britain, for some reason, no longer does it. We've now reached a stage, Jeremy, where I don't think we should even just wring our hands over the government and say they're useless and everything else.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 8. I don't know where the time's gone. We're already 2 hours into the show already. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Keep your calls coming in and your voice notes. They keep us going. 0344 499 1000. All of your views very, very welcome. Also, a lot of you getting the hang of just getting in touch to say where you are, because a lot of people around the world listening and watching this show every single morning from 6 to 10. We've already been told that we've got one listener listening out in Korea, South Korea, on a cruise ship. Here's one from John, who says he's listening from Lagos in Portugal. My wife got this, sod this, I'd rather be listening to Mike Graham mug for my birthday, an unofficial product from a certain online retailer. Yes, I've just seen the picture. It's absolutely fantastic. First time I've seen one, but thank you very much indeed for that. If you're listening from anywhere, even if it's not that exotic, you can always let us know. Amanda knows a thing or two about exotic locations. Simon Calder joins us, travel correspondent, nay, travel guru from The Independent, because there was a bit of chaos on the Eurostar yesterday, which I'm assuming is probably carrying on today. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yes, and of course, I'm contractually obliged to point out that it's actually Lagos in Portugal, not to be confused with Nigeria's biggest city.
Ah, okay. Well, thank you very much. It's a Brazilian pronunciation, isn't it?
It is. Anyway, lovely place, Lagos. I've not been lucky enough to get to Lagos, but I'm sure it's lovely too.
Okay.
That's not important right now.
Well, don't try and get there by Eurostar, because you'll have trouble.
You certainly will do. OK, we've had 2 miserable days and the struggle continues, I'm afraid, for passengers on the passenger trains which run through the Channel Tunnel from London St Pancras International to Paris to Brussels and to Amsterdam. Things started going wrong late on Tuesday. We then had overnight yesterday some cable theft, and it caused all kinds of mayhem, mass cancellations and extremely long delays. And exactly as you speculate, that is continuing this morning. Just had a look, the first 4 trains coming from Paris to London, with lots of people who were stranded overnight in Paris, where, as you will know, it's Paris Fashion Week, so you can't get a hotel room for love nor money. Those are running late, and we've got a cancellation coming up as well. And this is all happening at a time of year when those trains are absolutely full to bursting. They've got 900 people on each. You start cancelling trains, and unfortunately, that's an awful lot of people who need looking after.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading this morning that some unfortunate hapless travellers were saying they were delayed for as many as 7 hours. Other people saying that hotels were costing over €1,000 to stay in. What's the compensation scenario for people who are stuck on this stuff?
Really good question. Right, let's just sort of turn this around and say, if there'd been a problem with British Airways, EasyJet, Air France flying between London and Paris, then it's absolutely clear. You wouldn't get any cash compensation for the journey if it wasn't the airline's fault, and let's say cable theft isn't Eurostar's fault, but you would get an absolutely open-ended duty of care. If a hotel is going to cost €1,000, so what, £850, then the airline has to pay for it. Eurostar will not. They were capping the maximum cost of a hotel at €300 or £250, and then they were saying we'll pay for your taxi to get to and from that. And I've been speaking to some people who were in central Paris and were actually sent to hotels in Charles de Gaulle Airport, which you will know is not exactly a hop and a skip away. So that's been very messy. And the subject of compensation, yes, like the train companies within the UK, Eurostar has a kind of delay repay, but it's fairly grudging. I mean, if you are over 3 hours, over 2 hours late, then you will get half of your ticket price refunded, or you can take a little bit more in the form of a voucher. There was one train which was so spectacularly late, took 3 times longer than it should have done, that they've actually said, all right, you can have 3/4 of your ticket price back. So you're not going to, if you're thinking, oh, what a mess, at least I'm being compensated for that, it's not as generous as it is on UK trains. And like with all these things, I dare say, it's complicated to try and get the money as well, because you need to spend loads and loads of time. And it's not something you want to do while you're sitting in a hotel, you know, without any signal, or, you know, where you don't want to use the local phone. I mean, it's just a nightmare, isn't it? Yes, it is. And I was down at London St Pancras International yesterday. For all the many overseas long-haul tourists who are trying to get around. So lots of people from North America, lots of people from Asia. They simply haven't got a clue what's going on. And Eurostar was saying, we advise you not to travel today. You know, do cancel your journey and rebook for another day. A lot of people would have done that thinking, OK, well, they'll put me up in a hotel, and they wouldn't. You only get a hotel if if you are literally stranded. So and if you volunteer and say, all right, I'll go on a different day, they say, oh, well, you volunteered. Right. You're not stranded then. So really quite messy. And I hope that questions will be asked about how Eurostar responded to what was a crisis, not of their making, but they need to do a little bit better. I've also asked Mike why you can't actually stand up on a Eurostar train, because you will be aware that if you are a passenger on a long distance train in the UK, Manchester, Edinburgh, Bristol to London, if you're desperate to get there, you just get on and stand. It's not going to be very comfortable. You'll be paying a fortune for it, but at least you'll get there. Yes, it's a very good point. But it sounds like an absolute nightmare. Simon, good to talk to you as ever. Thank you very much indeed. Simon Calder, travel correspondent there at the Independent. If you're stuck trying to get somewhere on the Eurostar, looks like you might still be stuck for quite some time. But let us know if it's affected you. Let's have a quick word with Craig, who's in Oxford, wants to talk about the state of the nation. Craig, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How's it going?
Yeah, very well. What can I do for you?
Oh, I was just having yet another chuckle at James Cleverly earlier. He rolled out the same line that all the Labour and Conservative MPs seem to roll out about reform, and it's, oh, you can't trust them, they won't be able to run a successful government, they won't be able to form a government. They've not been doing it for years. Exactly. Neither Conservatives or Labour can do it. So every time they do that, it just stokes the fire and pushes people more towards reform.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, isn't it? Because the word competent is well overused, I think, in this particular situation, because I don't think we've had a competent government, really, for as long as I can remember.
Exactly, and I think you've even touched on it in the past. The quality of politicians that we are lumbered with is dismal. I mean, I think the quality of most of the professions in this country is on the decline. And certainly politicians are amongst the worst that in my memory.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not been roaming the streets as long as you, but yeah.
Yes. No, I take your point. It is terribly, terribly tragic, really, that this is the best we can come up with. Great, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Talking about some other stories that we're doing today, ChatGPT is what we're calling it. This is Wes Streeting's latest idea for improving the NHS. Apparently, he wants to introduce AI so that when you ring up to talk to a GP, you don't actually talk to a GP, you talk to some version of it on AI. Many of you saying, we're already doing it. Lots of places have already got something like this in place, so I'd love to hear from you, because does it actually make it any better, or is it just automated hopelessness? You know, you can either get it from a person or you can get it from a machine. Morning, Mike, says Clayton in Dartford. If Wes gets his way, we'll be talking to a robot at our GPs. Good to see Sir Keir will be gainfully employed then. And Kenny from Edinburgh says, Mike, if we are to use ChatGPT, then surely our taxes should come down, because this isn't the National Health Service we should be getting. I'm getting sick of the government doing nothing to fix any of the many problems with the public services, but who still demand more of our money to pay for an increasingly crappy service. Well, that's it. Isn't the point that we're actually now paying more money into the NHS and getting a worse service, which surely is not the way round that it ought to be? Absolutely and utterly ridiculous. Tongue-in-cheek, I don't think you trusted polls. I didn't think you liked polls, but polls you like, mind you. What about a poll conducted by Poles in Poland, says Paul in Hitchin. Up reform, he says. Yeah, I remember that one. Morning, Mike. Like myself, you probably remember a time when you could phone up a company and get straight through to an actual person. What the hell has happened to this place? The crap you have to go through now is disgusting. It sometimes takes 15 minutes to get to that point. Press this, press that, enter your date of birth, enter your national insurance number, enter your inside leg measurement. It's a joke, and I swear it's got worse since COVID. No wonder people are suffering from mental health issues, says Brian in Worthing. I have to say, there's no question that anybody who has a relatively busy life will know that you have to set aside like an entire afternoon if you have to ring somebody to get something sorted out, and you probably end up not getting it sorted out anyway. When it ever does happen properly and you actually do get something sorted, it's always a surprise, isn't it? Why? Why is it so useless? This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sent his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when it's time for Julie Hartley-Brewer. The weather is looking very fine out here in London. A little bit cloudy, but Wimbledon weekend beckons, of course, as is indeed Glastonbury, where it's going to apparently bucket it down with a load of storms. People are telling me it's already raining on the south coast. It's not very nice over in Wales as well. We'll get you some updates around the country. Some of you are letting me know where you're listening from this morning and where you are watching from as well. All sorts of people in all sorts of different parts of the world. Montenegro we've had South Korea on a cruise ship, we've had Portugal, we've had California, lots of people listening up and down the country here, of course, as well. We've got the NI conversation coming up, AI I should say rather, with Wes Streeting deciding, the NHS might be failing, but why don't we introduce some artificial intelligence into it so that when you ring up to try and get a GP, you don't have to worry about not getting one because you can't, because either they're on strike or they're only working 3 days, or they're off on a course somewhere, or they can't talk to you because simply they just don't want to. You'll get an AI voice which will tell you exactly what's wrong with you. It will possibly send you a prescription as well. I'm not sure that's going to work terribly well, is it? Also, the welfare bill is coming up, and I don't just mean how much we're going to pay for it. I mean what they're going to vote on Tuesday. Keir Starmer's facing a massive rebellion, and possibly the equivalent of a vote of no confidence if he loses. According to the Daily Telegraph this morning, he's going to be basically watering down the cuts to welfare because the backbenchers want it. So this is a man not in charge of his own destiny, not in charge of his own party, not in charge of his own future, and quite frankly, not really in charge of the country. It's pretty dreadful. Let's get a voice note from Stephen.
Hello, Mike. Stephen from Newcastle here. Brilliant show. Listen every morning. Outstanding. You're on about people going to Glastonbury who are on about benefits. The last one of your callers. I've thought for years now, anybody claiming a single penny on benefits, I'd have their passport taken off them. I wouldn't let them leave the country. How on earth anybody on benefits can afford to go on holiday is beyond me. What a rip. Nice one. Ta-da!
Absolutely right, Stephen. I mean, it's not like we're talking about giving bread and water to people in prison or anything like that. But if you are on benefits because you have chosen that particular lifestyle, not because you are forced into it, surely if you've got enough money to go on holiday, then you're getting too many benefits. It's as simple as that. Or maybe like a lot of people who are on benefits, you've actually got a job on the side. You're working in the black market like so many of those Deliveroo and Just Eat drivers on mopeds who are driving around the cities of this country delivering food to people who can't be bothered going outside to get it themselves. We are in a very bad place, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Hitchens is here. We're going to talk to him about a great many things, including the NATO summit yesterday, the way that Donald Trump has kind of just got his own way, it would seem, and why so many people around him seem to want to just be nice to him all the time. People can't quite understand how he gets it done. Also, we'll be talking about that terrible case of the sword killer up in Hainault that happened last year. He's just been found guilty yesterday. Guess what? It turns out he was addicted to cannabis and he had a £100 a day habit. That's an awful lot of cannabis, and he was taking an awful lot of other drugs as well, which basically sent him doolally. 6 minutes to past 8. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. This one from Steve, who says, we normally reward Prime Ministers with a knighthood when they leave office. As Starmer already has one, can we take it off him instead? Yeah, don't mind that. One from Chris, morning, Mike, on the adverts ban on alcohol. What a joke. When there was no adverts on TV, youngsters still try to drink and a smoke. Also, with AI doctors, what happens when the AI doctors go on strike? Well, I suppose one of the advantages with AI is it doesn't actually go on strike. Let's talk to Peter Hitchens. But first up, though, Darren has got a voice note for us in Holland.
Morning, Mike. Darren over here in Holland. Yeah, when I got back home from work yesterday, put the news on. I got myself a beer as well, regardless of what they're trying to tell you. Yeah, watched the conference with Donald Trump, slapping down the reporter from CNN, slapping down the New York Times, slapping down a reporter from Spain about them refusing to meet the 5%. Yeah, and then Starmer came on, and I turned it off.
I think that's pretty much everybody's reaction, I'm afraid. Let's see what Peter Hitchens has to say. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, these summits are happening more and more often now. I mean, barely a week goes by when there's not yet another summit, whether it's a G7, G20, G8, NATO, you know. I mean, it used to be a lot simpler than this, didn't it?
Well, I suppose so, but it's a wonderful way for politicians to holiday at taxpayer expense. And who can blame them for enjoying that?
Yes, and ignoring the problems at home, presumably, as well.
Well, obviously the problems at home are quite difficult to solve. Actually making sure that unemployment drops and inflation goes down and economies run and that law and order is kept is quite difficult.
Yeah.
But prancing about on foreign stages is quite easy, and everybody around you is very sycophantic, and you begin to go mad, as almost all politicians eventually do. And this is obviously not going to be particularly difficult for Mr. Donald Trump, a man who's already totally convinced of his own sainthood, who's genuinely seeking a Nobel Peace Prize, which I still think is quite funny.
Yes, I'm told that they've now withdrawn the offer. I'm not sure whether that's a permanent withdrawal or whether you know. But I mean, a lot of people, particularly kind of what you might call the more pompous commentators, and I don't count you amongst those. You'll be glad to know.
I'm very grateful to hear that.
But they're all sort of scratching their heads going, why is everybody being so nice to him? You know, why?
Because they're afraid of him.
Yeah, of course.
People are nice to Donald Trump because they're scared of him.
Right.
Wouldn't you be this enormous, wholly unpredictable person who can almost certainly fire or make life miserable for anybody around him? You would be scared of him. And many of these people haven't got much in the way of character or courage or indeed ideas of their own. So he comes along and he plainly has strong beliefs, so they often only last about 5 minutes before they're replaced by new ones, and therefore he gets his way. And it's more of a reflection, it seems to me, on the people around him than it is on him that he has this impact. Some of the things he says are quite interesting. I mean, I'm not terribly taken with this 5% business myself, partly because I don't know where on earth the money is going to come from.
No, or when.
And partly because no one seems to have spotted this basic fact. If every single NATO country spends 5% on defence, where are they going to be spending it?
Right.
Well, obviously in the United States, where most modern military equipment is made, and that this is a huge part of Mr. Trump's campaign. It's very similar to his tariff bullying, that he simply wants, and that's reasonable for a national leader, to improve the economy of his own country. With that, mostly means it weakens the economies of those who fork out to buy American military equipment. Anyway, there'll be an awful lot of fiddling, so it'll be pensions and
so much of it from Starmer
will become military spending if you.
Well, so much of it from Starmer is talking about 2035, which is so far off that, you know, all wars may have been finished by then, or the world may have been finished. Nobody really knows. But it seems to me that an awful lot of that announcement yesterday from Starmer about, you know, how we, you know, because he said we were going to build up our own economy and we're going to create growth by putting money into munitions factories and submarines and all sorts of things in Britain. And the first thing he does is buy a load of planes from America, which I'm convinced is part of the trade deal.
And this extraordinary fuss that was made about this, we're buying American planes so that we can drop, with the permission of the United States and not otherwise, American nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
I don't see why this is a matter for rejoicing. Why, if we were a serious independent country and we wanted to, we used to actually have our own nuclear bombs, which we could drop from airplanes, but we scrapped them. And we used to have planes from which we could do it. Now we're being offered incredibly expensive F-35s. From which we could, I presumably pretty much under American orders, drop American nuclear bombs. Why does that make us stronger or more independent? I don't get it. It doesn't seem to me to be a subject for rejoicing at all. The F-35 is another interesting aircraft in many ways, apart from its enormous cost. The way in which we have been unable to actually put permanent squadrons of F-35s on these gigantic aircraft carriers we've built, so that when they go to sea, the aircraft are borrowed from the Royal Air Force, or indeed borrowed from the US Marine Corps, to make it look as if it's an aircraft carrier, when in fact it's largely empty most of the time. Right. One of the reasons why we haven't got these aircraft is because they are so expensive.
Yeah.
And where again is the money to come from? We're constantly told we haven't got any money, and correctly told we haven't got any money in our budget deliberations, and yet we're supposed to be spending all this money on military equipment. And again, the pretext for this is the terrible threat we supposedly face from Russia. Let me tell you that the International Institute of Strategic Studies recently produced a report which said that the European NATO nations already spend three times as much as Russia does on military equipment. And they then said, well, of course it doesn't count because Russia gets more bang for its ruble than we do, which is a fantasy as far as I can say. A huge amount of Russian military spending goes straight into the pockets of corrupt people. I'm sure some of that happens in the West as well, but nothing like as much as it does on the Russian scale. We're fed so much rubbish about all this, I don't know where to begin. But the really interesting thing which Trump said was on the plane over, when he was asked about the fabled Article 5 of NATO, which is supposed to commit all NATO members to rush to the aid of others if they're attacked. And he said, well, it sort of depends. And I think this is very important for you to understand. If you read Article 5, it does not say that all countries will give military aid to an attacked member of NATO. It says they can decide to give aid up to and including military, but it doesn't oblige them to do so. It could say, we're coming to your aid by supporting a really tough resolution in the United Nations. It's a much weaker treaty than it's generally billed as being. And the doubt has been there from the start among the European nations as to whether the United States would actually come to the aid of European countries under attack.
But I suppose if you were
remember that.
Yeah, but if you were Donald Trump, I suppose if you were watching at the beginning of the week the ridiculous performances by David Lammy, both in the House of Commons and on the BBC, and by Luke Pollard on another station, where they couldn't actually say whether they supported America's decision to bomb Iran. All they kept repeating, sort of, dogma-like, was, well, we were not involved. It was hardly a message of great backing, was it?
That's because they're afraid of him. I mean, an independent country would either say we support you or will take the position I take, which is that it was an act of grave folly. That once you've behaved like that, if you take unilateral action against a country with which you're not at war, then it becomes impossible ever afterwards to say to the Russians or any other aggressive country, you're guilty of illegal aggression, because they can simply point back and jeer and say, well, what were you doing when you bombed Iran, a country with which you were not at war and which had not attacked you? Because it put him in a very awkward position. The other thing is that it's not getting mentioned very much here, but I think there's quite a fuss about it among intelligent people in the United States. He greatly exceeded his constitutional powers, especially since the War Powers Act of 1973, I think it is. He really isn't allowed to take action of that kind unless America is actually under attack. Again, it wasn't. And his fury when the intelligence report said, it seems to me quite reasonably, that it's possible that this bombing raid didn't actually achieve all that much, is the fury comes, I think, because he's probably afraid that it's true. But after all that,
well, I don't know. I mean, as the person who made the allegation said, it's an incomplete and sort of what they call unreliable report, isn't it? So
well, how can you know? People hugely overestimate what you can discover from satellite pictures, and they're very useful, but they can't tell you any more than what they can see. And also what they can't tell you is whether this action was signaled for days. If the Iranians didn't get their uranium out of Fordo and put it somewhere else during that period, they must be very stupid. So it's not particularly surprising if intelligence people speculate that not much was destroyed. Also, you simply don't know from the surface just how deeply those bombs penetrated. If you read carefully the descriptions of their capabilities, which are formidable, there is some doubt as to whether they could have got deep enough to get into the Fordo.
There is.
I don't know.
But I mean,
it's not reasonable to say what they did.
Yeah, but I mean, I take a very neutral view on this, really, in the end. If it works and if it brings these people to a place where they're not going to build a nuclear bomb because they might fear what would happen if they did, then surely that's a good thing.
Did you ever see Mike, did you ever see a fantastically good film called Charlie Wilson's War?
I have.
Well, you remember that at every stage, it begins in Afghanistan with the Americans defeating the Russians in Afghanistan by recruiting basically the Saudis to help them. There's a guru who appears every so often in the film. He's asked, "That's good, isn't it?" When the Americans win some triumph, and he says, "We'll see."
Right.
And the last scene is, of course, a plane flying towards the Twin Towers, which many would say was an ultimate consequence of the arming by Americans of Afghan jihadis in that battle to kick the Russians out of Afghanistan. So actions have consequences which sometimes pop up years afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
I wouldn't be sure about this one. I would very much say we'll see about this.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, I say we'll see about an awful lot of things, and I say it to an awful lot of people about Donald Trump as well, because the people particularly who are very critical of him don't know how it's going to end up, and any more than you or I do. So I mean,
nor does he.
And maybe nor does he. But the point is
I don't think he has a clue. But I don't. His mind can't settle on something for very long. He has a fantastic political cunning, which is unmatched.
Yeah.
But I think that can't be allowed to make up for all the other things he lacks, such as historical knowledge.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I'd rather have him in charge of something than Keir Starmer, because...
well, that's not exactly a huge compliment.
I know it's a low bar, but, there we are.
Anybody in charge of anything than have Keir Starmer in charge.
Let's talk about something else that I know would be of interest to you this week, and that's Marcus Monzo.
Oh, my goodness.
The guy who was found guilty this week of the practical decapitation of a 14-year-old schoolboy, Daniel Andrew. And I thought of you immediately when I heard the verdict yesterday. Guilty. I think he gets a sentence later on this week. He had developed an obsessive quest for spiritual fulfillment, which included him developing a 100-pound-a-day cannabis habit and regular usage of a heady cocktail of psychedelic drugs, including LSD, magic mushrooms, etc. I mean, it's a terrible story, isn't it?
It's the peaceful drug again, isn't it? Good old marijuana, which is supposed to make people so laid back and nice, and yet my friend Ross Granger compiled over many years, largely from local newspaper reports, because national papers have mostly given up covering it, the huge number of cases of completely irrational, crazy violence in this country, which are committed by people who are long-term users of marijuana. Now, what he's not saying, what I'm not saying either, is that these people commit these offences when they're high. It's that the long-term use of it is now so strongly associated with irreversible, quite serious mental illness that some people who have used cannabis for a long time become very seriously and irrationally violent. It's not. People sometimes think I'm trying to make excuses for people of this kind, to say, well, they should be let off or in some way not treated as criminals. I don't believe that at all, because the possession and therefore use of marijuana is itself quite a serious crime. My point is this, that if the link which appears to exist, first of all between marijuana and mental illness, and secondly between marijuana-induced mental illness and severe irrational, crazy violence, then why on earth are we openly considering as a country the legalization of this drug, when in fact we still have laws which could enable us to control it and prevent people from using it? It really is time we picked up on these stories, put two and two together, made the necessary four, and said, look, this is a drug which is not soft or peaceful, which is associated. I agree with you, it's correlation, not causation, because nobody's done the work on causation. But the correlation is so strong between marijuana and mental illness now that it really is crazy to continue down the path of weakening the enforcement of law against it and giving a clear run to the greed lobbies and other selfish forces which are constantly campaigning for its legalization. It should not be legalized here. Other more sensible countries, such as Japan and South Korea, very strongly prosecute its use and possession in a way which we still could if we wanted to. And they suffer much less from this sort of thing. And it's a warning which we really ought to heed. And it's only because so much of our media and political establishment is full of advocates of marijuana legalization that we don't make any sense of these cases when they come up. Here's another very big warning. if you don't heed this, then honestly, what do you expect will happen next?
Yeah, absolutely right. Peter, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got to run. Peter Hitchens, columnist at the Mail on Sunday, with his thoughts on where we are today in the news. One from Phil, who says, Ray, the health provision. My wife went for a scan yesterday, 2 days after her doctor authorised one. We arrived 15 minutes early for the appointment and exited the hospital. Saw us 2 minutes before her appointment. We have another appointment with the GP today to decide the next steps in care. Spoiler alert, we live in France. Yeah, because that wouldn't happen here. Morning Mike, says Steve in Cambridge. Introducing AI to the NHS could work, as the many layers of management don't work and actually make everything worse. But we all know it will never be fixed. I think that is the real depressing part of it all. Alan in Montenegro says this, regarding Streeting's AI GP idea, if you search a medical issue you might be having, it invariably indicates that you potentially have a terminal illness and to seek medical advice immediately. What's the point? This is just more Labour guff. Well, this is what I was saying. The problem for me with AI is that it gives you a kind of a vague overview of things. It's very rarely particularly exact. It's very rarely absolutely on the money, and it's very rarely anything other than a sort of a catch-all of what it's been able to kind of trawl around for on the internet. So if there are things that are wrong on the internet, AI will give you those things as part of what's right. And if you're looking for actual, advice on things that are so important as your own health, or whether or not you need to be seen by a doctor, or whether or not you shouldn't worry, I'm not sure AI is the answer. Certainly not yet, anyway. I'm yet to be convinced. This is Talk.
We need an agreement for the Islamic Republic of Iran to say no more enrichment, because they don't just risk our lives here in Israel, they risk the entire region and the world. If these people, these are apocalyptic jihadists, which means that the doctrine of mutual deterrence doesn't exist with them, because they're quite happy to sacrifice their lives for the next life and everything waiting for them there. And so you're not dealing with rational people. And this is why we couldn't wait one more week.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. Coming up, we're going to speak to Jack Elson, political editor at The Sun. He's got a big page 10 in today. Haunted, it says, the headline above, a very haunted-looking picture of Keir Starmer. Starmer's in statesman mode at the NATO summit, but he's in crisis mode at home as the benefits cuts rebels tear his party apart. Just before we talk to him, let's get a voice note from Jimmy.
Mike, it's Jimmy from Halifax, currently headed to your neck of the woods, London, on the M1. Donald Trump, genius. He's got all these countries to guarantee or to commit to a 5% defence budget, and now he's selling them all the planes to get that 5% defence budget. Absolute genius, Donald Trump. Great show as normal. Cheers.
It is the art of the deal. I mean, somebody said to me yesterday, the whole point of Donald Trump is that he wants to make himself immensely wealthy during the whole course of the time that he's in the White House. But he's certainly making the country wealthy, and part of the deal that he's doing with European countries as well, and probably other countries, is to make sure that when they up their defence spending, they spend an awful lot of that money in the United States of America. I mean, you'd have to say that is kind of genius. Let's have a look at what he had to say yesterday at the summit, the NATO summit in The Hague, when he was asked about the reports that actually the bunker-busting bombs in Iran hadn't gone as well as he thought.
This was an unbelievable hit by genius pilots and genius people in the military, and they're not being given credit for it because we have scum that's in this group. And not all of you are. You had some great reporters, but you have scum. CNN is scum. MSDNC is scum. The New York Times is scum. They're bad people. They're sick. And what they've done is they're trying to make this unbelievable victory into something less. Now, even they admit that it was hit very hard, okay? But it wasn't hit hard. It was hit brutally, and it knocked it out. The original word that I use, I guess it got us in trouble because it's a strong word. It was obliteration.
And that was Donald Trump yesterday having a go at some of his, shall we say, critics in the media. Let's talk to Jack Elson, political editor of The Sun. You don't really get that kind of talk, Jack, from very many leaders in the world, do you?
Good morning, Mike. Well, no, you don't. Donald Trump is truly one of a kind, and you know, people might not always like the way he puts things, but you can't doubt his ability to generate a headline and generate news coverage. You know, he is the ultimate TV president. But you know, obviously on a serious point, going back to what your caller said just then, he can affect change as well.
Yeah.
And it does seem that he has managed to cajole allies who have been scrimping on defence payments for decades now into actually putting their hand in their pocket and stumping up some money. And I think that many Americans, you know, not all of them like Donald Trump, but many will be actually pretty thankful and grateful that for once America is not bankrolling the whole of Europe. And actually, people are starting to pay more money. Keir Starmer being one of them, but other countries, Germany's been scrimping for a long time. Other sort of Central European countries, and so if they're going to step up, then fantastic.
Yeah, but also the genius part of it is that he's got them to spend more money on defence, but he's also got them to spend that money in America, you know, which is sort of, you know, trebles all round for the US economy. But yeah, I mean, and also, by the way, I mean, people say, oh, if whether or not you like what he says and the way he says it, you know, I don't think there's any doubt our listeners and our viewers love what he says and love the way he says it, you know, so they're absolutely taken with it, and they wish to God we had a leader that would speak and sound the same way, but unfortunately we don't. Your piece today, which is great, sums it all up really. You know, he might think he's in statesman mode, but he didn't look particularly statesman-like. He started, to me yesterday, he looked at the NATO summit for the first time as if he doubted even himself, you know, because he's got so many problems at home. He's having little influence abroad really. He wasn't really in the loop last weekend. He didn't really know whether Iran was going to be attacked by America, and then when it did happen, he couldn't bring himself or his cabinet to admit that they supported it.
Yeah, totally. And as I write in this piece today, no Prime Minister, a year into their premiership, after having won a stonking landslide, should have to go on a global stage where essentially you have World War III breaking out around you and have to insist that you are still confident that you will even be Prime Minister at the next election.
Yeah.
And this benefits rebellion that we have, which is hitting Keir Starmer, many people in this party see this as symptomatic of a deeper problem, which is that Keir Starmer increasingly looks like that he is not in control. In theory, he has a majority of 160-odd Labour MPs, but he's not actually seems to be the master of that majority at the moment, and he seems to be buffeted by events. And at the slightest, I mean, Margaret Thatcher used to say that some people are signposts and some people are weather vanes. But at the moment, it looks like Keir Starmer is a weather vane because when anything gets tough, he seems to fold and he U-turns, whether it comes to the winter fuel allowance or, you know, the national inquiry on grooming gangs. Now we're seeing him buffeted by events once again when it comes to this benefits rebellion. And the problem with that is that people don't like chaos. People don't like leaders who are weak and who change their minds at the first sign of trouble. You know, Margaret Thatcher was very unpopular when she came in, but she stayed the course and actually managed to take people with her. Keir Starmer at the moment looks like that he sort of bends with the wind and actually he's not in control. And the problem for that is that the chaos, voters don't like chaos, voters don't like that. And so he gets more unpopular, which means that his Labour MPs get more emboldened to do what they want, because they see these MRP polls come out the whole time, and there's one today, and they show them increasingly losing their seats to Reform. And so many of these Labour MPs now are going, well, you know what, actually, if I'm going to be a one-term wonder anyway, and I'm going to lose my seat in 4 years' time, then I'm just going to do what I damn well please. I'm not going to listen to Keir Starmer. And that is the problem he now has, is that as this gets on, and as this chaos comes and he gets more unpopular, then these rebellions are only going to get more frequent.
Absolutely right. And when you have a front page headline on the Times this morning saying rebel MPs want regime change, you know, we actually had funnily enough, a note yesterday from a listener who said, you know, we do want regime change, but not in Iran. We want it here in Britain, because an awful lot of people in the Labour government have upset their backbench members, haven't they? And there's a sort of sense that Morgan McSweeney, who was meant to be this kind of mastermind, this campaign strategist, you know, incredible genius of political life, has kind of just run out of road. You know, there's people calling for him to be removed. They're saying he's part of this kind of overexcitable boy atmosphere in Downing Street. I mean, you work there. Do you get a sense that there's a sort of bunker mentality going on?
Yeah, no, Morgan McSweeney, he's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy, as some Labour MPs are saying now. Now, listen, obviously there are some Starmerites in the party, and there was lots of them that came in the 2024 general election who are totally devoted to the McSweeney way of politics, which is, you know, appealing to middle ground, staying the course, picking a fight. You know, Morgan McSweeney, to his credit, did manage to eschew many of those sort of old Labour socialists from the party ranks when in opposition. However, I think that many people now are getting pretty sick of his combative mode, which he has been, which is sort of his sort of style, really, his modus operandi. And many people now are saying, you need to take us with you. You need us. You can't just take us for granted all these times. And the problem is that many of these Labour MPs who are part of this rebellion, they're not the usual suspects like the John McDonnells of this world, or the Richard Bergens or Diane Abbotts, who are always going to kick up a fuss. They are experienced committee chairs, people like Meg Hillier, people like Helen Hayes, who know what they're doing. And the fact that Number 10 and their whipping operation and the political operation, which Morgan McSweeney is ultimately in charge of, didn't have the foggiest that this was coming on Monday night, when about 100 MPs had signed it. Number 10 were completely ambushed by it. One Labour MP told me it was like an ambush by the Viet Cong, you know, swift and overwhelming in its force. Then the questions are starting to be asked about, how well do you really know your party? If you didn't see something like this coming and you thought you could just force it through with your majority, then how well do you really know your backbenchers? But what this will do as well is feed into the overwhelming sense that Labour hasn't changed, and for actually all of the platitudes and the insistence on behalf of the leadership before the election and now is a changed party. They're still having the same old rows, and most people in this country want to rein in the welfare bill, right? It's going to be about £100 billion in sickness benefits alone by 2030. We're talking about £5 billion here. If they can't even get a £5 billion package of welfare savings over the line, then what hope do they have of the rest of it and other serious reforms?
And supposedly Starmer's now going to take to sort of persuading them personally, which I think might be a massive mistake, because it may backfire altogether. Because we learned, I think, from a piece in the Telegraph this morning, that when they tried to get tough with the backbenchers and they sent out a few sort of, you know, hitmen to do so, the number of people who then wanted to rebel went up rather than going down. So if Starmer goes out and starts to try and sort of, you know, smooth talk them and use some kind of persuasive technique, he's not exactly very good at that. So they might just end up saying, well, not only are we going to rebel, but we're going to get even more people to rebel. And is it then a crisis for him?
Well, I think they're in crisis mode at the moment. They're really panicking, and they're saying in public that they're keeping calm. And Starmer bizarrely yesterday tried to almost appear very tough and dismiss them as noising off. Well, now he's sort of come back with his tail between his legs and is going to be the one who is fronting this ring round and these talks with rebels. Whether or not he'll be able to shift the dial, I think a lot of MPs aren't feeling very loved at the moment. And they actually want some face time with Keir Starmer. I think that there's a feeling among some of them that he's taken them for granted. But obviously now, you know, we're hearing talks about possible concessions. Either way, it is not good for Keir Starmer. You know, if he stands firm, doesn't make concessions, and then loses the vote, it's awful. If he pulls the vote, it's awful. And if he backs down on these welfare package, despite saying that he was completely committed to it and that it was a moral crusade, he said it was a moral crusade to cut welfare. Well, if he slides back on them now, then people will just think he's weak. And so he's got himself into a massive mess of this. I think how he comes out of it will sort of speak volumes about what kind of government this is going to be. As I write in the piece today, whether he's a master of his own majority or just a mere passenger in this government.
Yeah, and whether he's actually managed to kibosh his own leadership. I mean, one final thing, just before I let you go. YouGov's first MRP poll coming out this morning with reform, if the election was held today, 271 seats. A big problem for Labour, losing over 200 seats and going from 412 down to 178.
I mean, what a mess. What an absolute mess for this Labour government. The fact that less than a year on, the MRP poll, which is sort of the gold standard poll that we use to do seat-by-seat projections, shows that they're not just going to have that majority cut, but cut significantly.
Yeah.
And they'll be pushed into second, and Reform are the ones who have the most seats. Now, I noticed by the MRP poll that no party has an overall majority. The Tories, I think, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, are on something like 40 seats.
46, yeah.
So there's something ridiculous like that. Listen, this can change in 4 years' time, and it's only a snapshot at the moment. And Labour, clearly, I think, by their own admission, have got off to a pretty woeful start when it comes to the lifetime of this government, and will be desperate to get it back. But what is interesting as well is the spread of these votes, because actually, if you look at the vote share in that MRP poll, Reform is slightly ahead of Labour in terms of vote share, but in seat projection, they're miles ahead. And that is because they are appealing to all areas of the country. They're taking votes not just from the Tories, which are their sort of traditional hunting ground, but also Labour red wall seats as well. And so that should really worry Keir Starmer.
Yeah, it really should. Jack, great to see you. Great piece as well. Jack Elsom there, political editor of The Sun, writing in the paper today, Starmer is in crisis mode at home because the rebels are tearing his party apart. Who could have thought it? Absolutely extraordinary. Let's see what's being said on the Sun letters page. Sarah from Hastings down in East Sussex says the vow from the Home Office to arrest migrants and seize their bikes for working for delivery firms is just another pledge that will never happen. We had the Smash the Gangs pledge, which achieved nothing. The migrants will just get more bikes as they do with the dinghies. Maggie in Devon says, I'm not surprised that migrants are getting jobs as fast food delivery drivers. I've had deliveries by young men who can barely speak a word of English. It's a disgrace that they're able to earn money the minute they arrive on our shores. People are very annoyed about that. Coming up, let's talk to Anne McElvoy. She's Politico's co-host of politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, former senior editor at The Economist. We'll get her take on Wes Streeting's latest suggestion to fix the NHS, diverting cash from wealthy to working class areas, and of course bringing in some AI doctors.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:40. We've got a bit of breaking news for you. 3 prisoners have fled from an open jail and are currently on the run from the police. Brilliant. As the public have warned not to approach them. I mean, as if it couldn't get any worse for Keir Starmer. I mean, he's supposed to be emptying the jails soon, but presumably this went a bit early for him. Jason McDonough, Daniel Harty, Barney Casey all escaped from Spring Hill Open Prison near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire on Monday evening. They were all wearing standard-issue grey tracksuits or jogging bottoms. I mean, when they say escaped from an open prison, what they mean is they basically walked out the gate and nobody stopped them. But anyway, public warned not to approach them. So if you are in that area, just be careful. Near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. Let's talk to Anne McElvoy now, Politico's co-host of politics at Sam and Anne's podcast. Anne, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Things not going great for old Keir Starmer. Wes Streeting's trying to find some hope in the NHS budget that might be able to give him something to cheer about. What's it all about, this moving of money from richer areas to poorer areas?
Well, I think this is really what we call pitch rolling towards this big NHS review, which is due very shortly in just over a week, with Wes Streeting very conscious of the fact that there are these huge health inequalities.
Yeah.
And it is true that if you live in a poorer part of the country, and especially if you're a longer way, like from a teaching hospital, like one of the big well-known teaching hospitals in your part of the country, often your care is worse, it's more delayed, you're delayed getting GP appointments. This is where things like cancer diagnosis really falls off a cliff for a lot of people, because they're too late in getting seen, they're too late in getting referred. You can imagine it all banks up, and then you've got outcomes which are far worse than for those living in better off areas. So Wes Streeting has put about 2.2 billion, he's saying, from the pot that he's got, into trying to do more on health inequalities. The big question will be then, what do you spend it on? If you just spend it at the front line, you pour more people into it, but they're not always there, they're always already trained up as doctors, nurses, clinicians. Or do you go down a route of more technology, but then you have to bring that in. There can be lots of mistakes with that, and also people need a while to get perhaps used to doing more telemedicine and more stuff that involves IT and even artificial intelligence.
Yeah, because we were hearing this morning that there's a plan to put, what they're calling ChatGP into action. And a lot of people, funnily enough, this morning have been in touch with me saying, actually, where they are, it's already in place, that there are there's something called Dora, apparently, which is a female AI app which can talk to you about what you might have wrong. I'm still slightly unsure about AI, particularly if it comes to something as important as medicine, because I've found that whenever I've asked it a question, for example, and it may just be because I'm a bit old-fashioned, it gives a very generic sort of answer. It's not very specific. It's kind of, it sort of brings you all the bits of things that they've found on the internet, but it's not really necessarily going to diagnose you or tell you what you should do next.
Well, I'm going to challenge you a bit on that, Mike. I mean, if you want better healthcare, I study a lot of international healthcare systems, and the ones that are performing best are making the best use of big, what we call data sets. As much information as we can get about you or about the producer or about me, and therefore the medicine and the cures, the treatments are tailor-made to you. They're not just something that you talk about being, off the peg AI. Well, at the moment, you often diagnosis of being a bit sort of off the peg, and has got a lot better. But it is true that if you put bad AI, I mean, if you just to reassure people, doctors will not be using, or even, it doesn't even have to be doctors, but any health service, not just using something that you or I might type in and try to diagnose whether we've got a serious condition. That yes, there are with this sort of what we call word to text things, where you take this transcript of what we talked about, tidy it up, and then that would go to the next place. That is very sensible. You don't want to waste people's time typing things up. But yes, there are slips, there are misunderstandings. AI is learning as it goes. But there is no health system that I can foresee in the next years that does not productively make use of it. And I think it should speed up some of the awkward kind of interface that people have, where they're frustrated. How many times do you have to give your information if you go through a hospital process? Until the point of insanity,
Yeah, exactly. But this is the trouble, that they've taken, in previous incarnations, NHS sort of, modernisation apps have never really gone too well. They did that terrible idea back in the sort of early part of the century where I think they spent $4 billion on a new kind of IT system, which just didn't ever work. And you worry that the NHS, because it's so huge and cumbersome, just can't make anything work, really.
Yeah, but the app development now will be a lot better than it was then, and like you say, that was an absolutely catastrophic misstep. And the NHS is a very big system, so when it missteps, it makes really big mistakes. But I do think AI health, or using, to be a bit less sort of pompous about it, just using more and more detailed information about the patient that can be handled. There's no way that amount of information can be done by people typing things in. You know, I've got two parents who worked in the NHS. My father was a senior administrator who sat there filling out large forms.
Right.
And if I did work experience with him, I basically totted up columns and passed them on paper to someone else. I mean, that's clearly not a way to run a health system. AI can be hugely helpful there, but we need to much clearer information for patients about that their data is safe, it's secure, where it needs to be anonymous, that it's anonymized. On that, so I do have sympathy with your skepticism. I'm just saying, for the money that we have, the money we're ever likely to have, the aging population that we all want better healthcare, there is no way around that. So I think that the Wes Streeting's focus, technology with a human face, if you like, is probably a good one.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. But good to talk to you, Anne. Thanks very much indeed. Anne McElvoy, there, Politico's co-host of Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, with much more faith in the NHS than I've got, I have to say. I'm not sure that anything that they now put money into will properly work unless they completely overhaul the way they do absolutely everything. We've been asking for you to let us know where you are. Jeff is in France. He says, listen to your show every morning. Keep up the good work. And one from Keith, who's in the island of Mindoro in the Philippines. He says, listening and watching, it's 3 p.m. and very hot. Well, it's going to get very hot here, apparently. It's going to get up to 32 degrees in London, in the southeast anyway. But I've got plenty of you who, of course, are not exactly necessarily right in the middle of that. And I've got one here from Robert, who's in Bridgend. He says, in the Principality of Wales, Stan. Absolutely peeing it down here. We've just gone into the monsoon season, or as you in England call it, summer. Bring back global warming, acid rain and melting ice caps. Yeah, I know how you feel. Yeah, it's not always very nice down there in Wales, but Bridgend, lovely part of the world. 8:47.
Yeah, no, I think it's a common misconception. I think a lot of people do think that actually it is illegal for first cousins to get married because of the obvious concerns around, and everybody knows it, those sort of Habsburg monarchs from Spain and everything like that, and those issues that happen around health. But it's not illegal. It was illegal for hundreds and hundreds of years in the UK until Henry VIII decided to marry the sister or the cousin of his then wife. So it was actually done in a very strange way.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to very nearly 10 minutes to 9, almost into the final hour of the show. We've got plenty to talk about, of course, including AI doctors, AI sort of advice for people using the NHS. Is that going to be something that you would want to actually do? Let's get a voice note from Maddie.
Morning, Mike. This is Maddie calling in from Essex. Loving the show as per usual. I'm just going through the motions of booking my holiday and then listening to your programme. Travel, chaos. NHS, chaos. Illegal immigrants, chaos. Thames Water, chaos. This government, chaos. That should be their slogan. Chaos, chaos, chaos. Everywhere you turn, the common man is always having to bear the brunt of all the people in power who cannot do their jobs. Take care, Mike. Bye.
Yeah, Maddie, I'm sorry, it does sound like a little bit of a desperate situation, doesn't it? Matthew says this, less than a year in, and he's lost so much support. Starmer out is trending again, says Matthew. And Starmer, of course, has put out his first tweet of the day, what I call the first lie of the day. Here's what it says. What works for business works for Britain. More jobs, opportunities and money in people's pockets. That's why I secured major trade deals with the US, India and the EU. He's been saying this for weeks now, right? And then finally, today's trade strategy is about delivering growth and making sure working people feel the benefits. What's he talking about? The trade deal so far with America has resulted in Britain spending billions of pounds on some American aircraft, which will carry, as Peter Hitchens says, American nuclear bombs. How is that benefiting British working people? It's benefiting American working people. It's certainly benefiting the American economy. It's not improving the lives of working people in this country. Surely to God. Anyway, Davey in Edinburgh, will come to you in a little while. Let's go first to Steve Berry, former Top Gear presenter, of course, because once again, ladies and gentlemen, we've had more bad news for the motoring community because drivers now are being hit by fines worth almost £1 million a year, and they're all fines for going into a yellow box. I'm sure many of you will understand how that feels. Steve, very good morning to you, sir. Are you there?
Hey, boy. You threw me with that one. Yeah, I was also glad to see, Mike, that once again Manchester's leading the way. Only last week, all 10 boroughs of Greater Manchester made it into the top 20 of worst driving boroughs in Britain. And today I find that we are half of the fines outside of London and Cardiff. How antiquated does that seem?
I know.
Until 2 years ago, it was only London and Cardiff. But 2 years ago, they gave local councils the authority to police these yellow boxes. And boy, did they embrace it with zeal.
So have they painted a lot more yellow boxes into Manchester than there used to be?
Here's the problem, Mike, and I'll illustrate it with one of the busiest yellow box junctions in Britain, which was made international news. My missus in Vancouver, Canada, said to me, "You're on the local news. Chapel Street, Salford is on the news here." Do you remember a few weeks ago, 40 buses ended up nose to tail?
Right.
Because Andy Burnham, Keir Starmer, if you got him off Temu, decided that he was going to improve cycle lanes. Nobody cycles in this city except former Somalian child soldiers delivering a Greggs to lazy people. He's going to improve it and cause chaos. That yellow box is a nightmare. And I'd say this to them. If people end up stranded in the yellow box, whose fault is that? Is it the driver or is it you, the people who decided to stick up random roadworks everywhere, causing traffic chaos?
Yes. It's a very good question and it's a very simple answer. It's their fault. I'll tell you what, I came across one the other day, and this will really shock you. It's in my neck of the woods down in southeast London. It was a former yellow box which is now continually congested, right? Because they put cycle lanes in and bus lanes and all the rest of it. It's a one-way system which you can't get around. Everybody's stuck in it all the time. But they've actually painted over the yellow box. So you can see that it's a yellow box, but it's now got a sort of black paint on it. So I don't know whether I'm allowed to sit there or not. So what's the answer to that one?
Well, I tell you what, before we start saying, oh, this is all about road safety, of course, the way a yellow box works very quickly is you can't enter it unless your exit is clear if you're going straight on or to the left. If you're turning right, you're allowed to move to the middle of the road until your exit is clear.
Right.
Right. Pretty simple.
So you are allowed to sit. If you're turning right, you can sit in it then, can you?
Yeah, but not if you're turning left or you're going straight ahead.
Right.
But imagine this, Mike. I'm in my car, a little two-seater MG, when an MG was an MG.
Yeah,
not a quick
nice.
save, which is what they are now.
Yeah.
Or a Netto Nissan, whatever these cheap branded things. They're not an MG, I know that. My MG's an MG made in Abingdon, Oxfordshire.
Fantastic.
Little two-seater car. So, Mike, I'm behind a double-decker bus. How can I possibly see if his exit is clear?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to do that? Osmosis, extrasensory perception, perhaps like there's a new Superman movie, I Was Born on Krypton also, rather than Fairfield Hospital in Bury, and I can see through a double-decker bus. So what am I supposed to do? Stop at a green light, wait till the bus completely clears the junction, and then set off?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, that would cause chaos, wouldn't it?
It would. Well, it is. I mean, the roads are chaos now. I mean, driving around, people tell me that Manchester's a really difficult place to drive around because they've got bus gates, they've got places where you don't know which lane you're meant to be in, they've got dual carriageways that are not dual carriageways, they've got those big traffic cameras now as well, the really tall ones, which you can see inside your car to see whether you're doing anything you shouldn't be doing, right?
And it's also a bit of traffic apartheid, if people don't mind me using that term, because most of us that have got a swanky 5G connected, super wacky portable computer, let's stop calling them phones, they're portable computers. Those of us that have got one of those have got an app that tells us where all the cameras are.
Yeah.
But what about the people who can't afford that sort of a phone?
Yeah.
Oh, they're getting busted because it's only applied at some junctions and not others. And while we're on this topic, please, Mike, can you spare me 30 seconds?
Yeah, go on.
It's bugbear that my missus had when she moved here from North America. We're talking about turning left and right at junctions. Yeah. In the UK, do we turn behind each other or in front of each other? Because it seems that every single junction in Britain is different.
Yeah.
I know what we're supposed to do, but what do we do on a daily basis? Because it confuses the wassanem out of people from countries where they have actual rules.
Yeah.
Rather than what this is with yellow boxes, which is a tax, and we all know that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say, and you're going to probably tell me I've got it wrong, but I'm going to say we turn in front of each other, don't we?
Mike, what we seem to do, and I'm sure as a driver you'll know this, there seems to be a sort of local custom that's developed as to whether you turn left or right. And as a motorcyclist and a cyclist, as well as a driver of a cute little two-seater MG, a real one, I feel I'm rolling the dice every single time because I think, is this guy going to turn in front of me?
Yeah.
Is he going to turn behind me? What do we do? Because it's different everywhere you go. And so instead of sorting that out, what they're doing is putting the emphasis on this yellow box business and saying, we're incompetent and we've caused traffic chaos and gridlock. We're going to fine you every time you get stuck in one of these yellow boxes.
Yeah.
And like I said, Manchester, half the money outside London is here in Manchester.
Amazing.
So there are few things to be proud of, but maybe that's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the answer is there is no law about which way you should turn on right. If you're turning right, you're not in front or behind. Do what you like.
Mike, you're supposed to turn oncoming traffic. You're both turning. You're turning like that.
Yeah.
You're supposed to go behind each other.
Oh, eh?
But who's driving today, and everybody watching this will go, yeah, but it's a lottery. At some junctions, people turn in front, and at some people turn behind.
Yeah.
And if you get it wrong, the consequences.
Well, I'd say in London now, most people do it in front. That's certainly what my experience would be. But there we are. Listen, good to talk to you. Great to see you, Steve. Thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to Davey in Edinburgh. He's been waiting patiently. Davey, what have you got for us?
Hi, Mike. On the A1 doctors.
Yeah.
Well, this is going down a rabbit hole list. We've already got an explosion of, for want of a better word, malingers in this country.
Yeah.
And it seems to be with mental health, apparently, since COVID. So I've just looked up here, Google, and I've got an AI overview of depression. Now I can go in and I can read it word for word. There's about 20 different symptoms we've got here. And the AI doctor will say, oh, you're suffering from anxiety, medical depression. Why don't you just take the rest of your life off?
That's what they say.
And lo and behold, they'll have another, and hold on, we'll put you through to our benefits bot. And they'll put you on benefits.
Yeah.
You don't even see anybody.
It's mad, isn't it? Absolutely mad. Davey, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Great call. Lots of you got lots more to say about all manner of things, including James Cleverly's interview we did in the last hour. We're going to be talking coming up to Matt Francois MP, Shadow Defence Minister, of course. We've also got much more to do in terms of these runaway prisoners. We'll tell you more about that. And, of course, what is going on with Keir Starmer? Is he finished? This is Talk.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. We're into the final hour of the show already. Unbelievable, isn't it? It's Thursday. It's the 26th of June, ladies and gentlemen. And if you didn't know, we're about to get into Wimbledon season. Glastonbury's going on this weekend. I don't think anyone who listens or watches this show is probably going because the guy who was at the front of the queue last night was apparently a chutney maker from Cambridge called Christopher Beard. So there you are, age 55. That tells you everything you need to know about why you shouldn't be going to Glastonbury. The weather's going to be terrible as well. So you're going to get rained on, you're going to get sunburnt, you're going to come back and, you probably take too many drugs, and that'll be the end of that. Mark Francois here, of course, to join us in the final hour. Shadow Defence Minister. Mark, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got a lot to talk about, not least, of course, what's going on inside the head of Keir Starmer, because he is coming back from the NATO summit with a massive headache, and by the end of this week he might actually be a man without, end of next week I should say, a man without any portfolio whatsoever. He's in crisis mode. We spoke to Jack Ellsworth from The Sun earlier today. Starmer's set to back down on benefits, the big benefits bill vote coming on Tuesday. So many rebels now, it's up to about 120, possibly 123. He's going to try and convince them all to vote with the government. He's going to try and tell them all that he's going to give them some concessions. The trouble is, if he doesn't win the vote, or if he postpones the vote, or if any other kind of situation happens, he's basically got nowhere to go. We'll be talking about that. We've been listening to what you've been saying this morning as well, and here it is.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn.
Morning, Mike. Joan from Norfolk.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark from Derby here. Why does Keir Starmer's mouth, every clip that you show, when he's listening to people or he's finished talking, his mouth is pursed yet slightly open? It looks like he's whistling. Fixing the foundations. Smashing the gangs. He's horrible.
I mean, you can't really disagree with that, can you? Coming up, we've also been talking about Wes Streeting and his idea that he wants to make some AI doctors available to you. I mean, as people have said, if Keir Starmer's no longer Prime Minister, at least he can work in the NHS. AI, and he can give you some health analysis as well. While you're at it, listen, don't forget, you can get in touch with us by a variety of ways. 87222 on the text, tweet us at talkTV, call us 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And just a quick bit of breaking news before we start with Mark Francois. There's 3 prisoners who have fled from an open jail, currently on the run from the police. The public are warned not to approach them. I think we've now got their mugshots. They've escaped from an open prison called Spring Hill in a place near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. Jason McDonough, Daniel Harty and Barney Casey. There's the 3 of them there. They all look like pretty ghastly individuals. So don't go anywhere near them. If you see them, just call the police and let them know where you've seen them. They've escaped, as I say, from Spring Hill Open Prison near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire on Monday evening. It's now Thursday, of course, so you do wonder why they didn't tell us a bit earlier. But, you know, what can you do? Mark Francois here, Shadow Defence Minister. Very good morning to you, Mark.
Morning. It's nice to be back.
Welcome back to Talk. Yeah, nice to see you. We must start really with this this vote on Tuesday. Keir Starmer facing a rebellion at home, which is possibly going to be, in effect, a sort of vote of confidence in not only him, but in the government, isn't it?
Well, he's absolutely boxed himself into a corner. Yeah. It looks like the Labour whips have massively overplayed it. I think, in a nutshell, the problem Starmer's got is if he, A, pulls this bill at the last minute, or B, loses it, or C, waters it down so much as to make it effectively meaningless, he's no longer really the Prime Minister.
No.
He's just some bloke who lives in Downing Street. No. Because if you look at his majority on paper, it's massive. If he can't actually produce that majority in the eye lobby of the House of Commons when he needs it, he's not really running the country.
No. And he's not even running his party, is he?
Well, and a lot of this is a completely self-inflicted wound. You know, this is an arrogant government.
Yeah.
And I think they've kind of, as I say, I mean, I was a senior whip for a few years, I know a bit about that. They've kind of over-whipped their backbenchers. They've gone in with the knuckle dusters far too early.
Yeah.
And they've had a massive pushback, and now they're between a rock and a hard place.
Because when they did go in with the knuckle dusters, as you say, there was only about 80 rebels, and now there's over 100. And so it seems as though that didn't work. They're now going to try the soft soap tactic that Keir Starmer's going to come back and try and talk them into sort of, you know, some kind of standing down on the rebellion. But either way, this government has been in not quite a year. Next week it will be a year. We'll be all, you know, I won't say celebrating, commemorating some of the things that they've done. And we were looking at what they have done, and there hasn't really been anything good. And I don't say this as a kind of, you know, totally anti-Labour person. I'd quite like the government to be quite a good government in this country, no matter who's doing it. But they can't seem to make anything work.
No, and there's no plan. There's no strategy. Right. There's no moral compass by which they're aiming. It's all sound bites and slogans. And I think the public have realised that. I think Parliament's realised that. I think a lot of Labour backbenchers have realised that.
Yeah.
And that's why his authority is sort of, you know, seeping, you know, under the door. Right. One of the reasons for this, there are numerous, Mike, is because it's a government utterly obsessed with human rights.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister is a human rights lawyer. Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, now famously a sort of religious zealot, if I can, about human rights. And because of that, they take bizarre decisions like being prepared to pay £30 billion of British taxpayers' money to Mauritius to rent back a bunch of islands that belong to us in the first place, and also pursuing Northern Ireland veterans through the courts, whilst at the same time being prepared to make it easier for Jerry Adams to sue the government and thus the British taxpayer. Because their minds are obsessed with human rights, they end up tied up in these ridiculous knots, which look daft to the voting public, but seem to make sense to them. So it's a government completely hidebound by its obsession with the Human Rights Act and the ECHR, making one mistake after another, and even their own backbenchers can see it. Hence the mood.
Right, and of course, we'll come back to the SAS
yes, please,
story in a second, but that includes as well their obsession with human rights of refugees, migrants, whether they're legal, illegal. You know, they keep talking about deporting people. They haven't deported anyone since last year. They haven't deported anyone since many people decided to go back voluntarily. We learned this year from this week from the Sun that, you know, people are getting off boats in this country, and within hours they're working as delivery drivers for food companies because it's that easy for them to do it. It's absolutely extraordinary.
Well, of course, and the public see this on their television screens, and they get very angry. Now, before you say to me, why didn't you do something about it? We did have a plan. It was called the Rwanda plan.
Yeah.
Some people liked it, some people didn't. But it's one more plan than Labour have got. There was, you know, they tried to recreate something with Albania, and you had that, you know, farcical press conference with that 6'7" Albanian, where the PM basically says, you know, we've got this deal, and then live on camera the Albanian president says, well, actually, no, we don't, mate. I mean, you couldn't. It was like something out of the thick of it, right?
I know.
So there's no plan. They haven't smashed the gangs. The gangs remain resolutely unsmashed. In the home counties, they're trying to cover our constituencies in concrete. A number of places in my part, one called Dollyman's Farm, I feel passionately against. They've got no compass, there's no plan, as I say, and the public can palpably see it. He's in real trouble. I've been a member of Parliament for 24 years. He's in real trouble.
Yeah, I said this from the moment he got in, actually, but certainly from last autumn, that there was something that was going to happen to him, whether it was some kind of independent sort of story, whether it was going to be a piece of policy that went wrong, or some act that went on inside the party. I just knew that he wasn't going to last, and it's all unravelling. The wheels are coming off faster than ever.
And Ange just waits.
Oh, she's very much helping him on his way, isn't she? She's not doing anything at all to come to his aid. But, you know, you're right to say, before I ask you about what you should have done, I know that the Labour government blocked every single thing the Tories tried to do. And you talk about human rights, and they used the human rights lawyers. You know, where are all the human rights lawyers now when Starmer keeps talking about deporting people? They've all disappeared. You know, you wouldn't have been able to move for them if it was the Tories trying to do it.
Well, no,
so that's what happened.
Well, actually, the human rights lawyers, a lot of them are working for the people who are trying not to be deported.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of money to be made doing that.
No, sure. But what I'm saying is that they were very vocal about what the Tories were trying to do and how cruel it was and how against the law it was, and how it was in fact putting Britain on a par with terrible, terrible, ghastly countries like Russia and Belarus and all of that. They've all gone very quiet, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this slogan that they're going to smash the gangs, well, the gangs remain resolutely unsmashed, as people can see on their televisions every night. So what do? They have gimmicks, they have summits, they rename units, they create, you know, channel commanders and all these sorts of things. I mean, the guy who was their channel commander, who was a respected 3-star general, you know, resigned within a few weeks of getting the job because he could see that why he did it is ultimately down to him, but some people think he could see it was impossible to do within the parameters, that the legal constraints that were provided. So the public see this on their televisions and they get angrier and angrier. Yvette Cooper, bless her, hasn't got a clue what she's doing from one day to the next. And that's why he's in real trouble. I'm not saying, you know, he'll be gone by the end of next week. I'm not making that point. But you can tell when a Prime Minister is losing authority in their own party. You can smell it in the tea room in Parliament, and he's got that whiff about him now.
No question. And which brings us to what you mentioned earlier, SAS veterans hounded with the threat of prosecution. This is also, I think, the reason why Keir Starmer's lost his authority is because he's being seen very much as a hypocrite, because he puts out all these statements all the time about how he's standing up for our armed services, how he's standing up for the security of Britain. And every single time you see a statement, you go, well, actually, that's not true. Because if you were standing up for the armed forces of this country, why are you going after members of the armed forces for something that they did dozens of years ago?
Well, look, Mike, this is something I've campaigned on personally for years. I once raised it at Prime Minister's Questions with Theresa May about 6 years ago. And the case of a guy who was a Chelsea pensioner, David Griffin, I think, from memory, who was being pursued, even though he was in the Royal Hospital at Chelsea, for goodness sake. So, look, so here's, if I may, here's the Daily Mail campaign. Good for them. This gets legally a bit fiddly, but let me see if I can absolutely boil it down. When we were in government, we brought in a thing called the Northern Ireland Troubles Legacy Act to provide protection to armed forces personnel from this endless cycle of investigation and reinvestigation, often at the behest of Sinn Féin.
Yeah.
Labour said in their manifesto they wanted to repeal that, but it took 4 years of campaigning to get the last act, so it would take a long while to replace it. So what they're doing is they've got what's called a remedial order, which is a procedure based from, wait for it, the Human Rights Act 1998, and they're using this remedial order, which is a sort of parliamentary surgical knife, to take out bits of the Legacy Act. And the two key effects of that, if you're still with me, are one, it would remove a lot of the protections for our veterans. So this whole conveyor belt of inquests and further inquiries would restart. And two, and here's the equally awful bit, it would make it easier for Jerry Adams and his cronies to sue the British government and ultimately, therefore, the taxpayer. What self-respecting Labour MP, and there are decent Labour MPs in the Labour Party, what Labour MP, well, by the way, we're debating this in Parliament this afternoon, what self-respecting Labour MP would want to walk through the lobbies and vote for what I've just told you the government wants to do, the vote will be in the autumn, and then go back to their constituency? They're not going to get bought a pint down the Royal British Legion, are they?
No, they really aren't, and that is the problem. Starmer, funnily enough, is just about to speak at the, I think it's the British Chambers of Commerce Global Annual Conference. We might dip into it at some point.
I understand. And by the way, most Labour MPs don't even know that's what they're going to be asked to vote for.
No, of course.
But they will after today.
But the point is that he's going to be talking about, building up our defences. He's going to be talking about recruitment. He's going to be talking about, making Britain stronger. But yet, how on earth can he then do that with a straight face while pursuing these men who have served their country, put their lives on the line, been in terribly risky situations, facing death, shooting people to kill them when they had to because that was their job, and they were asked to do it by the Prime Minister of the day? How can they be being chased?
Well, they're now partly being pursued under an act which came in after most of these incidents took place. The Human Rights Act didn't come into British law until 1998. Most of the conflicts and the troubles, or most of these incidents, often between the SAS and the IRA, but obviously there are others, happened decades before that law came in, right? So this is awful. And in terms of recruitment and retention, what sane person would join the army today if you know you've got a government that doesn't have your back, that even if you do the right thing and, you kill a terrorist who's trying to kill you and your comrades, years later some bunch of human rights lawyers, aided and abetted by a Labour government, are going to come after you for doing it? Who in their right mind would join the army? So there's it's not just an argument about the history of the Troubles, it's also a very hard-nosed argument about recruitment and retention in the British Army. And the army on paper is meant to be 73,000 trained troops. It's under 71,000 and it's going down. And if you carry on with this, what will happen is fewer people will join and more people will leave. So this is really dangerous. So when the Prime Minister, puts his hand on his heart and he talks about his commitment to the armed forces, well, OK, I'm not calling him a liar on national TV, but why is he doing this then? How does that stack up with all these peons of praise for the armed forces?
It really doesn't. It's ridiculous. We had a former SAS commander in here who spoke very well to us. He was in charge of the SAS after 9/11 in Afghanistan, and he came in and he's just about to be, or he has become the chairman of We Served, which is an organisation that we very much support.
And about can I just mention the petition very quickly?
Sure.
Right, OK, there's a parliamentary petition for people who want to protect Northern Ireland veterans from prosecution. It's got over 140,000 signatures. Because it's over 100,000, we've got a debate on the 14th of July for 3 hours in Westminster about this. So thank you to all of your viewers that signed it. But the more people that carry on signing it, it's technically open till November, the more signatures on that petition, the more moral weight we will have in that debate in 3 weeks' time. So I would very much urge any of your viewers and listeners to go onto the parliamentary website. It takes seconds to do, and sign that petition. If you want to do something positive as a British citizen to defend our veterans who defended us, please go online now and sign the petition.
Absolutely, we will do that. Ed Butler was the guy that we had here just the other day. He was a magnificent guy, and he said, and he spoke out very well, because not a lot of people do, because of all sorts of reasons. But he said, you know, the government should not be doing this. They should not be pursuing people, and they have a duty of care, quite frankly, to the people who put their lives on the line.
My colleague Sir David Davis, as everyone knows, served in the SAS years ago. He's been very instrumental in this campaign, along with myself and a few others. But it's the veterans, ultimately, who are making the case, but we absolutely agree with them. And, you know, David Davis has made this point that often the soldiers you're talking about had to take split-second life-or-death decisions, you know, in the dark. It's very easy to sit in an air-conditioned courtroom 50 years or more later and second-guess what that soldier did or didn't do, but you weren't that soldier and you weren't there. I know. And as I say, if we carry on, they call it lawfare now. If we carry on with lawfare like this, the army will shrink and shrink, and that is not in our interests. That does not promote our national security. It doesn't make us a strong partner of NATO. It doesn't help us support Ukraine.
No, it doesn't. Mark, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Mark Francois, MP and Shadow Defence Minister. Let's have a quick listen to the Prime Minister, who's speaking this morning at the British Chambers of Commerce Global Annual Conference. Have a look.
Because, this is crucial, as we fix those foundations, we also made choices that will make us a fairer, more prosperous country. For example, as Siobhan mentioned, 2 years ago at this conference, I set out that bold vision in relation to planning reform, then leader of the opposition, to remove the blockages in the system, to build the labs, the warehouses, the grid connections that all of your businesses need. And 2 years later, standing here, that vision is written into legislation, and we're pushing it through Parliament. And every day new spades are hitting the ground. Growth revised up because of it. A promise made to you 2 years ago, a promise delivered. It's the same with our industrial strategy announced earlier this week. For far too long, Britain ignored this. We didn't back businesses. We didn't invest in projects and technology that are critical to our future. Didn't have a plan that gave your businesses the certainty that you need. Well, now we have that plan, and it's been drawn up in partnership, and it is, quote, a significant step forward for our economy. That's not my words, they're Siobhan's words. And as she says, and this to me was the most important part in Siobhan's response on your behalf, that what you shared with us, what you fed in, has been, quotes, heard and reflected in our strategy. Your fingerprints are on that strategy. It came out of the discussions that I and others have had with many people in this room. It wasn't plucked out of the sky by a government. It was reflecting back what you had told us needed to change. And that is what I mean by partnership, where both partners do different things, bring different things to the table. It's a statement shared by other leaders. What Siobhan said wasn't just what Siobhan thought, what you thought. It was the sentiments of the CBI, of Enterprise Nation.
Well, what's he going on about? Who's Siobhan? Sorry, Prime Minister. You know, this Siobhan you keep mentioning. She's just the voices in your head. Siobhan.
In R&D.
Rodney. Here's a message from Sacha Lord for you, for your growth spurt. Sacha Lord has tweeted, your industrial strategy fails to mention hospitality or the nighttime economy even once. In terms of jobs, people are making redundancies and cutting hours. You've ignored the 5th biggest sector and the 3rd largest employer in the UK. That's a message to Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer from the man who runs the nighttime economy in Manchester, which has been devastated by this government. We'll come back to Keir Starmer and his Siobhan obsession after this.
So we do need to look at this sector, but this current position on Tuesday is an interesting one. There's been no consultation. We want the hard-working people of this country to feel that the system is fair. Who wants to live in a family where you're going out to work, you're struggling to make ends meet, and I've got lots of constituents like that in Runcorn and Helsby, and yet you're living next to a family who are laughing all the way to the benefits office. This culture that we've got has got to change. People are taking the mickey.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:27. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock, another half an hour or so. Morning, says Steve. I'm coming to you from the Costa del Sol, 35 degrees, loving it. Love the show, keep up the good work. Yeah, make sure you don't drop dead, because, of course, we keep getting warnings, don't we, that people are going to die because it's so hot. This pathetic government have seriously exceeded my very low expectations, says Rain in Lincolnshire. All that aside, I thought I had an unhealthy hatred of Keir Starmer until I started watching Talk. I now know that is shared by many others, and I do feel somewhat vindicated. Fabulous show. Please keep up the pressure. It's needed more right now than ever. It's true. Let's have another look, shall we? Starmer speaking at the British Chamber of Commerce Global Annual Conference.
Logistics, in engineering, in freight. Think of the demand in the local economy, the cafes, the retailers, the pubs. And that is all true of that deal. It's why we had to be so focused to achieve that deal. The only country in the world to have got a trade deal with the US, something which we've been talking about for a very, very long time, is vital for the sectors that it protects.
Hang on a minute, he's got a trade deal with the US, which so far has resulted in us spending a load of money in America to buy a load of jets. And he's talking about pubs. He's shutting pubs down. What does Siobhan have to say? She's Siobhan Haviland, by the way, who's the Director General of the British Chamber of Commerce. He keeps mentioning her. I don't know. Very weird. Let's talk to... I'll tell you what, let's get a voice note from Michael.
Mike, it's Michael, halfway up a mountain in the Emirates. These illegals coming in and working for Deliveroo, etc., earn £1,000 a week. So that's 52 grand a year, or, before tax, it's £72,000 a year. Add to that the benefits they get, their food, their accommodation, and they're talking a six-figure salary there, if you take everything into account. So £100,000 a year before tax. These immigrants are on, these illegal immigrants are on. And you wonder why they're coming to the UK.
Well, exactly right. I mean, this is why it became so obvious this week that it's not just because they want a better life, they're not just economic migrants, they're coming here because they can actually make money. So in addition to getting free accommodation, free food, free bikes, free phones, free healthcare, and free everything else, access to football stadiums, to trampolining lessons, to driving lessons, they now actually can make money on the black market illegally and pay no tax. It's a win-win for them. Henry Bolton's here, International Border Control expert. Henry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Morning.
I mean, even for those of us who are fairly jaundiced about the whole illegal migrant business, this week has been a real eye-opener, thanks to the stuff in the Sun, because it now looks as though they're not just coming because they want to, they're not just coming because they can, they're coming because it's an actual business opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And I've been saying this for a very long time. The amount of people, I mean, all of those people who live in the towns where these people are accommodated know it perfectly well. All of the Deliveroo drivers, people in car washes, all the rest of it, these are the same people. And nothing is being done about it. The Immigration Enforcement Service is understaffed. The courts aren't processing any cases quickly enough. When they do, they're basically applying a very liberal sort of laissez-faire approach to it. So the system is utterly and completely broken. And listening to Keir Starmer just now, I was waiting to come on.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
The man, there is a total deficit of leadership there in his character. If he turned up to give you a talk or a presentation or something on some course, you'd be looking around for the coffee machine to keep you awake. The man is dull, boring, uninspiring, and has no passion. And, when you've got somebody like that trying to steer and drive government, is it any wonder that we don't get anywhere? Of course it's not.
No.
The man should not be anywhere near Downing Street.
Well,
and that's not a personal comment. It's a comment. The country needs leadership, and he's not providing it.
No, absolutely right. I think the point is that he may not be near Downing Street for very much longer, because the way things are going, he's got no presence whatsoever on the international stage. He was a joke at the NATO conference. He was a joke last week when he said he didn't think Donald Trump was going to attack Iran. He was a joke this week when he refused to come to the House of Commons to explain what our foreign policy actually is with regard to the United States bombing Iran. We don't seem to know. And now he's coming home to a massive rebellion in his own ranks over a welfare bill that he can't get through Parliament with a 165 majority.
No, indeed. And, although he's now under severe pressure and he might end up being replaced, we don't know yet, but let's see. But even if he is, what's going to come after him? It's not going to be any better. And even if there was a general election, what this country does not need promises. Yeah. It doesn't need sexy headlines. It doesn't need populistic, attractive theatre and razzmatazz. It doesn't need any of that. What it needs is visionary, strategic leadership with the acumen to deliver on what it says it will deliver, and the attention to detail to make sure that it's got it right. And it doesn't need self-serving politicians who are there for their own ambition or their own interests or those of their party. The country has got to come first, and I just simply don't see it. I look around and I look at every party just about, and I see, there are some, but they're on the fringes because they get drowned out by the sort of the noise of reform, of Conservative Party, sort of Robert Jenrick, who is actually quite good, and and who's coming up and who's doing what. But all of that, those games are what's getting the attention. And getting and when I say getting the attention, all the media attention is on the political games and gamesmanship and the theatre and the rhetoric. It's not on the actual ability to deliver practical results for the British people. And it's driving me insane, Mike.
Yeah.
And we see it
well,
on
it's
our
driving
boards.
everybody insane. People are getting really, really annoyed. People are getting very worked up because they see a failing system. They see a failing government, and they see a situation where literally nothing works and everything is against them. If they're taxpayers, if they're working hard, they see that there are migrants coming here and making money for doing very, very little and paying no tax and paying no rent. And Starmer talks today about setting up a fairer Britain. Well, he's been talking about that for a year, and it's now more unfair than it's ever been.
Fair for who? And these problems, Mike, they are complex. But if you've got somebody who really is a leader and really can pull the strands together, then and drive a unity of effort across government to deliver concrete results, and they know what they're trying to do. They know what they're trying to get at. Then these are not insurmountable problems, and that is what's so frustrating. The government behaves as though this is just trying to stop the wind blowing or stop it raining or something. It's not a force of nature we're faced with. We are actually pulling these people to the UK by making it attractive, by enabling them, giving them things, accommodation, what have you, but also enabling them by not stopping it, to work on the black economy, to make money in various ways, including criminality. It just drives me insane with anger and frustration, Mike, because these can be solved. I say it before, or I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I will keep saying it. It will take 8 months to turn this whole situation around, the whole situation on our borders. But the government doesn't want to listen. It's burying its head in the sand. We get reports now that Russia might be colluding in this. I don't know. I have no idea. But the point is that it's also a threat to the British public. It's not just the economy and what's right and wrong in terms of whether they can work and whether they're earning money. It's also a threat, a risk to public safety. and it's a risk to national security. And the government, how it can continue to bury its head in the sand over this, I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I think they're just cowards.
Yeah, no, I think so. They've got no clue, they've got no idea, and they've got no plan. Simple as that. Henry, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Henry Bolton, International Border Control expert. One from Alan in Peterborough says, just a thought, 3 dangerous prisoners escaped from an open prison. Meanwhile, Lucy Connolly, a harmless middle-aged woman, is still locked up in a violent, dangerous wing in a secure prison. What is wrong with this bloody country? It's a very good point. Richard Tice, of course, from Reform, went to see Lucy Connolly the other day and reported back that she's being mistreated, that they've tried to, and provoke her into making some kind of move that would mean it would be impossible for them to release her. They put her onto a very, very violent wing for violent offenders in the prison in which she's in. It's absolutely ridiculous. Tom, one from Mark, who says the PM is concerned with human rights, but not the human rights of the British taxpayer. He's more concerned with the rights of every other Tom, Dick and Harry. Well, you might say that. I couldn't possibly comment. John in Lincolnshire, why are 3 dangerous men in an open prison to begin with? Well, that's a very good question. An open prison, by the way, is about as secure as Wimbledon. You could probably escape from Wimbledon tennis with more difficulty. You can't. I mean, I tried to escape once from a horse racing meeting in Ascot because I was carrying a glass of wine. I couldn't get out. You can walk out of an open prison with a glass of wine, no problem at all. Absolutely ridiculous. But these 3 men are on the run, and we haven't got their names, but I'll bring them to you. There's the mugshots going up there. They've escaped from a place near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire, and so if you do see them, the police are saying, please do not approach them. But they've been going since Monday night when they escaped. Jason McDonough, Daniel Harty and Barney Casey all escaped from Spring Hill Open Prison near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire on Monday. The public are warned not to approach them. Well, that's helpful, but it might have been more helpful to know about it on Monday, to be honest. It's 9:38.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 20 minutes to 10. It is, of course, Thursday, 26th of June. Keir Starmer is speaking at the British Chamber of Commerce Global Annual Conference, and we're going to go nipping back to it in a minute. Apparently he's doing a Q&A session now with a BBC journalist, one Clive Myrie, a man who forgot, I think, to tell the taxman, didn't he, about some of the extra money he makes on the side. He said, you know what, it's so complicated, I'm just not going to moonlight anymore.
On the employment rights...
Unless, of course, it's for the British Chamber of Commerce and Keir Starmer. But there we are.
About consent, and quite right too, because those conversations really matter. It meant a lot. I've already said this to Siobhan this morning. It meant a lot to me that Siobhan put out a response to our industrial strategy, which not just said it was good, but said it reflected what you had fed into us. And that is because I believe that government isn't as good at doing business as business is as good at doing business. And therefore feeding back what business said to us. So yes, people have raised concerns with me about the Employment Rights Bill, but equally, many people have recognised that a secure, protected workforce is good for business, drives up productivity, and most of what's in the Employment Rights Bill is done by good businesses in any event. It is good practice in many businesses. We'll continue to work with you as we implement it, of course.
It's just not true, is it? I mean, businesses are saying they don't want this bill. So the idea that he's reckoning that all businesses are using it already is simply just not true. I don't know what Siobhan's got to say about it, but he got another 3 mentions of her there. Let's get a voice note from Adam.
Hi, Mike. Adam from Skipton here.
I've just listened to James Cleverly in your interview say that the public are grumpy with the Conservative Party at the moment, and we're going to we might flirt with Reform or other parties. I'm absolutely incensed with the Conservative Party. I'll never give them my vote again. They are single-handedly responsible for all the problems that are going on in this country that Labour are currently exacerbating, so they'll never get my vote.
Well, I think this is the problem. They don't really get the idea that they've lost people like Adam forever. You know, I mean, I said to James Cleverly, you worried that, you know, the party isn't really relevant anymore. And I've said it to Andrew Griffiths as well. Are you worried that, you know, the message from the Tories is not going to... I don't think they're getting it, the fact that they have been abandoned by most of the voters because of what they did for the last 14 years. Not for the whole of the 14 years, but for certainly the back end of it. Morning, Mike. I'm not keen on this AI doctor idea, says Marco in Sunderland. We've already got an AI PM and Chancellor that hasn't worked out too well. Mike, another new system at the NHS, says Fionn in Gwent. It won't work. Here in Labour-run Wales, we're still waiting for the last system to work. So far, only 26 years. Yes. Let's talk to Cormac Smith, former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Advisor, because, of course, there's been a NATO conference. Vladimir Zelensky was there. Let's get Cormac's view on what's going on. Cormac, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Mike.
So, Zelensky was at the NATO conference. It was very much dominated by Donald Trump. I mean, there wasn't a lot of talk about Ukraine sort of at the top end of it that I could see, but I'm sure you're going to tell me different.
No, I'm afraid I'm not. There was very little talk about Ukraine, and I don't believe Ukraine was significantly on the agenda. Donald Trump did say that he had a very nice discussion with Vladimir Zelensky, and he alluded to, you know, having some rough times in the past, but he said some very nice things. But clearly this NATO conference was all about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It was all about what's going on in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, despite the fact NATO is not involved in that. And it was all about, quite frankly, some of the most amusing sycophancy from Mark Rutte in particular that I have ever heard, and praise of Donald Trump. But I think being realistic, that this NATO summit was about doing everything that NATO members could to keep the US engaged in the European theatre for as long as we can.
Yes. Well, it seems as though much of that involves buying a lot of weapons and aircraft and whatever else from the US. You know, I think that the whole business of trade deals has been wrapped up in all of that as well, because Keir Starmer's today at the British Chamber of Commerce talking about how, you know, they've done this great trade deal with the US. Well, the first thing that they've done is buy or promise to buy, you know, about £1 billion worth of aircraft from America, which is hardly going to boost British economy. It's hardly going to boost, you know, British jobs. But, you know, it may well be necessary. But I'm sure that's part of the deal.
Well, you know, a comment on that. What they purchased, or what they have promised to purchase, is 12 F-35s, which, of course, are one of America's most effective fighters. But I'd remind viewers that it was about 3 or 4 months ago, I was out walking my dog and listening to the news when I do, as I do. And Donald Trump was making an announcement, and he was saying, you know, we produce the biggest, most lethal, best weapons in the history of the world, and we will sell them to our allies. But when we do, we will downgrade them by 10% because our allies may not always be our allies. And there have been several other countries raising concerns around the F-35 in particular, and what control the US would maintain over the use of those. So I think there is reason for concern there in the purchase of F-35s.
And I mean, as far as Ukraine being back on the table, if you like, I mean, he said, I think, Donald Trump, that, you know, Vladimir Putin's turned out to be a bit more difficult of a customer than he thought he was. This morning we've got a piece in The Sun talking about how Putin has been very active in undermining the west of Europe, effectively, by continuing to aid and abet smuggling gangs, providing fake documents, transport, even military escorts in some cases, to kind of flood Western Europe with migrants from the various different parts of the world from where they're coming.
Well, look, Mike, I think that's very, very credible. It wouldn't be the first time that Vladimir Putin has sought to weaponize immigration and refugees. The first big example we saw of this was back in Syria in 2015, I believe. You know, I've been studying Russian hybrid warfare since 2016. It's also referred to as grey zone warfare.
Yeah.
I think it's fair of me to say it's only in the last year or so that we're starting to hear a lot more, if you like, big characters, former diplomats and former intelligence and military men talking about grey zone warfare. Our public are simply not sufficiently aware of what it entails and all the different ways that Russia, Iran also, but Russia will use this to damage and destabilize our societies. Of course, we saw what happened in Salisbury back in 2018. But one of the things I learned very early on about Russia is they're probably not as smart or as strategic as I originally thought, but they are opportunistic. So while I would not say that we could lay the blame for our small boats crisis, or whatever one wants to call it, on Vladimir Putin, he is certainly opportunistic. And if he sees an opportunity to stick his oar in and exacerbate the situation, then he will certainly do that, knowing that it is not only costing us money in the United Kingdom, but it is increasingly costing huge divisions and problems within our society. And this is what Putin always wants to do. He wants to weaken us, and he wants to sow discord in our societies. So yes, I'd say it's very credible that he's seen an opportunity to, as I said, stick their oar in, if you'll excuse the pun, to stick their oar into this and exacerbate the situation and make it even worse.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Cormac Smith, good to talk to you, former Ukraine Foreign Ministerial Advisor. We were playing some of Keir Starmer's speech earlier to the British Chambers of Commerce and some of the questions that he was answering as well. Mike, you've got to feel sorry for Starmer, says Jason Dudley. He gets a name in his head and that's it. First it was Nigel, now it's Siobhan. For God's sake. What's wrong with him? Yeah, he kept mentioning her name. Jason Dudley says this as well. Listening to this pleb Starmer, you'd think we were the greatest economy in the world. Does he ever listen to the country? Obviously not. What an idiot. I mean, this is what people are saying about him. Just heard Rodney speaking to business leaders. Am I living in a parallel universe, says Adi from Adlington? No, I'm afraid not. And one from Clay in Folkestone in Kent. Hi, Mike, about the illegals working. If I was on benefits and was caught working, my benefits would be stopped. Why are they not stopping the benefits of the illegals? Two-tier Keir again. Yeah, absolutely right, because of course they should be taking that money and putting it up against what it is they're getting for free. So if they're staying in a hotel, make them pay for it. Surely that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Let's get a voice note from Matt.
Mike, Matt in Hove here. One thing that people haven't noticed about these illegal migrants in the hotels working as delivery drivers is the salary they're getting paid. Most of it is coming from the taxpayer. It's the same money because these hotels are ordering hundreds and hundreds of meals a week being delivered by these drivers. Hundreds of pizzas a week get delivered. They don't have 3 meals a day all cooked for. They are ordering takeaways. It's not only is the accommodation free, we're paying for their meals, but they're delivering themselves illegally. It's absolutely insane. This can't ever get repaired, I don't think. I think it's too late.
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, I take your point, Matt. It's a very funny one. I mean, I suspect the food that they're getting to eat inside the hotels is actually not the food that they're delivering from the bikes. But I get your point. The fact is we're paying for all of it. We're paying for the food, they're getting it free. We're paying for the hotel, they're getting it free. We're paying for their phone, they're getting it free. We're paying for them to work in this country for free. They get paid, but we don't, because we don't get any tax out of it. Brilliant. One from Lambie, who says, Mike, I had my yearly bonus payslip today. I'm a middle earner and struggling to make ends meet. Tax and national insurance came to £6,000. It is ridiculous, and it makes you wonder why you bother to work hard to pay for immigrant hotels and the rubbish Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves and Keith Starlin spend our money on. Great show. Thanks for speaking up for us normal people. Well, I mean, we can only try because it's so ridiculous. Absolutely and utterly ridiculous. And here's another one from Maggie. He says, my son bought me a mug months ago with your pick and saying, sod this, I'd rather be listening to Mike Graham. So I enjoy my coffee whilst watching you at the same time. Well, thank you very much indeed. Quite a few of you have actually got some of these mugs. I don't know where they're coming from. There's a bit of a sort of a guerrilla movement on the mug front. It's 9:51. We're nearly done for the day. We'll be back after this and with Julie Hartley-Brewer.
This is effectively a confidence vote of the Prime Minister.
Yeah, and that's what it is.
They say it's flagship reform. I mean, it's nothing of the sort. It's not. It's literally fiddling while Rome burns level of reform. But if he can't get through even that tiny amount of reform, he has no authority.
He doesn't, and his backbench MPs are now feel emboldened with what's happened with the winter fuel allowance when they took it away and they all had to take the grief off their constituents. Then they came back with a U-turn. So I think those MPs are saying, well, if it gets really difficult, we know he's going to U-turn anyway, and we've got nothing to lose.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:54. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here very, very shortly. Let's get a quick voice note from Kevin.
Morning, Mike. Kevin from Cornwall. Just back from sunny Portugal, so I've done my bit to increase the my carbon footprint by 0.000%. Great to get back to hear some sanity on the TV on my days. And Starmer, there's not a single word he could say, or not a single action he could do that would make me ever believe a single word he says. Isn't that sad for a Prime Minister of the UK? But they've set themselves up and they keep falling over every turn, don't they? Cheers, Mike. Have a great day, mate. Ta-ra.
Kevin, thank you. I mean, I don't know. What can you say about a man that just doesn't even understand how hated he is and how absolutely useless he is and how he just keeps coming out with all these platitudes about how he's saving the nation and putting money in the pockets of working people? I mean, does he actually have any sense of reality? Unbelievable. Anyway, never mind. It's competition time here at Talk. We're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you £5 grand of spending money. Here's everything you need to know, and here's how to enter.
Alright, kid. You have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5 spending money, all you gotta do is text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Well, welcome back. It's 9:56. Let's go to the phones. Daniel is in Epsom. Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Chief. How you doing?
Not bad, sir. Not bad at all. How are you getting on?
Yeah, it's been a long time, mate. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it has. Feels longer.
Yeah, I can't get on anymore. You're so popular, Mike.
That is the problem. That is the problem. Well, there's so much to complain about, isn't there?
Oh, mate, is there? I mean, the thing is, I rang in to say that I think Starmer really wanted the job. And now he's got it, he hates every moment of it.
He must hate it.
Every single day, when you see the continuation of the decline and degradation in Britain, and you're not actively doing anything about it, you're not listening to the...
Well, he's actually actively making it worse, isn't he?
Yeah, and when he got the job, he said, right, Sue Gray, where's the plan? She went, what plan?
Yeah.
So there was no plan, even though he told us that he had a plan. I just think I've never seen a worse government in... I've never seen one. No. I just think they're atrocious.
They're awful. I mean, we all thought that they would do things that we didn't like, and we got that. But we didn't know they'd be this bad. I'm sorry.
Do you know what? I'm going to have to write to the King and sort of ask him to intervene, or because I just think I think that we're about to witness in Britain the biggest political earthquake.
Yeah.
I think Reform are going to win the next election.
I think so.
And I think politically we're never going to see the like in the UK. I think it's going to be an absolute game changer. And I wish the election was tomorrow.
Yeah, I wish it was too, because if it was tomorrow, Reform would be in charge and Labour would be denuded severely, 200 odd seats down. The Tories would be down to 46. Daniel, thank you very much indeed. Julie Hartley-Brewis here. Very good morning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What you're both saying. I knew they'd do a load of stuff that we didn't agree with, didn't approve of, and
which is all right.
Democratically elected, whatever that's the voting system, that's the deal. But they are so abjectly incompetent.
Yeah.
The fact that people are talking about regime change, like changing, chief of staff and everyone in Number 10, they've not been in power a year.
No.
I mean, we've followed a lot of governments over the years. I was a political editor. I dealt with loads of governments. I have never seen this level of both incompetence combined with arrogance. Ever before.
And almost an unwillingness.
And we covered Boris Johnson's government.
And almost an unwillingness by Keir Starmer to understand what's going on around him.
The thing is, I know he's out of touch with a lot of voters because he thinks they're bigots for being worried about things like rape gangs.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is pretty out of touch,
Illegal
right?
migrants.
But he's out of touch with his own backbench MPs. He's out of touch with Labour voters.
Yeah.
That is quite... He lives in a rarefied world.
Yeah.
He thinks he's right about everything.
He's up there talking to the Chamber of Commerce as though